The moment Alara Voss's hand touched the penthouse door, her husband's voice cut through the silence like a blade. The dress stays. So do you. For 3 weeks, Dominic Vale, the most feared crime boss in the city, had barely spoken to his wife. Now, as she tried to leave, he finally broke his silence with a command that felt like a death sentence. But Alara didn't know the truth yet. Dominic wasn't keeping her prisoner out of cruelty. He was trying to keep her alive. Well, before we begin this journey of secrets, silence, and the dangerous price of love, I invite you to stay with me until the very end. If this story captures you, please hit that like button and comment with your city below. I love seeing how far these tales travel across the world. The city stretched out below the penthouse like a glittering ocean of lights, indifferent to the storm brewing 60 floors above. Alara Voss stood in the center of the master bedroom, her reflection fractured across 3 full-length mirrors that Dominic had installed when they'd first moved in. Back then, he'd said he wanted her to see herself the way he saw her, beautiful from every angle. Now those mirrors felt like surveillance. She smoothed down the emerald silk dress that clung to her body like a second skin, the same dress Dominic had laid out on the bed that morning without a word. It was one of his favorites, custom-made in Milan, cut to perfection. He'd chosen her outfit every day for the past 3 weeks, leaving it displayed like a museum piece while he disappeared into his study before dawn. 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of separate beds, 3 weeks of living like elegant strangers in a gilded cage. Alara had tried everything. She'd knocked on his study door with coffee at midnight. She'd waited up until 3 in the morning, hoping to catch him when exhaustion might crack his armor. She'd even cornered him in the hallway once, asking directly what she'd done wrong. "Nothing," he'd said, his dark eyes sliding past her like she was made of glass. "You've done nothing." Then he'd walked away, leaving her standing there with the word nothing echoing in her chest like a hollow drumbeat. Tonight, something had snapped. She'd found herself packing a small bag, just essentials, nothing dramatic, a change of clothes, her mother's necklace, her phone and charger. She wasn't running away forever. She just needed to breathe air that didn't taste like abandonment. Maybe she'd go to her friend Sophie's apartment across town. Maybe she'd check into a hotel and order room service and cry until her body remembered how to feel something other than this constant, aching confusion. The overnight bag sat on the bed now, a small act of rebellion that felt monumental. Alara slipped on her heels, black, elegant, expensive, and reached for her coat. The penthouse was always precisely climate-controlled, but the October night beyond the windows promised cold. She could see her breath fog the glass when she stood too close, a reminder that there was a real world out there beyond these temperature-regulated walls. She was halfway to the door when she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the direction of Dominic's study. Alara's hand froze on the door handle, her heart kicked against her ribs. For 3 weeks, Dominic had moved through this penthouse like a ghost. Always just out of reach, always one room away. She'd almost convinced herself he was avoiding her on purpose, timing his movements to ensure they never occupied the same space. But now he was coming. The footsteps stopped just behind her. "Where are you going?" His voice was low, controlled, the same voice that had once whispered promises against her skin in the dark. Now it sounded like a cross-examination. Alara didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on the door, on the brass handle under her palm, on the threshold that represented everything she needed and everything she feared. "Out," she said simply. "It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm aware." In that dress. Now she did turn, slowly, meeting the eyes of the man who'd somehow become a stranger. Dominic Vale stood 10 feet away, hands in the pockets of his tailored black slacks, white shirt open at the collar. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, shadows under his eyes, jaw tight with tension, hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. He looked devastating and distant all at once. "You chose this dress," Alara said, hearing the edge in her own voice. "You've chosen my clothes every morning for 3 weeks, Dominic. So yes, in this dress." Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or regret, but it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "I asked where you're going, and I don't owe you an answer." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but 3 weeks of silence had sharpened everything inside her into weapons. You don't speak to me for 21 days. You sleep in your study, you leave the room when I enter it, and now you want to interrogate me? Elara. No. She held up a hand, surprised by her own fury. You don't get to say my name like that. You don't get to use that voice, the one that used to mean something. You chose silence, Dominic. You chose distance, so I'm choosing to leave. You're not leaving. The words hung in the air between them, not a request, but a statement of fact. Lara felt something cold slide down her spine. Excuse me? Dominic took a step forward, and despite everything, despite the anger and hurt and confusion, her body still responded to his proximity. Her breath still caught. Her skin still remembered what it felt like when he touched her with love instead of this careful, terrible distance. The dress stays, he said quietly, each word measured and deliberate. And so do you. For a moment, Elara could only stare at him. Then the absurdity of it hit her, followed immediately by a wave of fury so intense it made her hands shake. Are you serious right now? You're giving me orders? I'm keeping you safe. Safe? The laugh that escaped her throat sounded broken even to her own ears. Safe from what, Dominic? From having a conversation with my own husband? From being treated like a human being instead of a doll you dress up and ignore? His jaw clenched. You don't understand. No, I don't, because you won't tell me anything. You won't talk to me, you won't look at me, you won't… Her voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. 3 weeks ago, everything was fine. We were fine. Then you overheard part of a phone conversation, and suddenly I'm a ghost in my own home. What did you think you heard, Dominic? What could I have possibly said that made you decide to erase me? She watched him carefully, saw the muscle in his jaw jump, saw his hands curl into fists in his pockets. It doesn't matter, he said finally. It doesn't matter? Elara felt tears burning behind her eyes and forced them back through sheer will. Our marriage doesn't matter? I don't matter? Don't. The word came out harsh, almost violent. Dominic closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and smoke, familiar and foreign all at once. Don't say that. Don't ever say that. Then what am I supposed to think? She tilted her head back to meet his eyes, refusing to be intimidated even though her heart was racing. You won't touch me. You won't speak to me. You leave clothes out like I'm a child you're dressing, and then you disappear. What am I supposed to think except that I don't matter anymore? His hand came up, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face. Her body tensed in anticipation, nearly swaying toward him, but at the last second his hand diverted, slamming against the door beside her head instead. The sound made her flinch. You matter, he said, his voice raw and low. You matter more than anything. That's the problem. Elara's breath caught. What does that mean? But Dominic was already pulling away, putting distance between them again like proximity was painful. He turned his back to her, one hand coming up to grip the back of his neck in a gesture she recognized, the one he made when he was trying to control something too big to contain. It means you're not leaving, he said to the window, to the city, to anywhere but her. Not tonight. Not in that dress. Not alone. You can't keep me prisoner, Dominic. Watch me. The casual certainty in his voice sent ice through her veins. This was the voice he used in his other life, the one she'd learned not to ask too many questions about. Dominic Vale was many things. Her husband, yes, but also something darker, something dangerous. She'd always known it, had made peace with it years ago when she'd chosen to marry him anyway, but he'd never used that voice on her before. Who are you right now? She asked quietly. Because you're not the man I married. His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn around. The man you married is trying to keep you alive. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? You heard me. Elara's mind raced. Alive? Dominic, what are you talking about? Who would… She stopped, realization dawning cold and terrible. Your work. It wasn't a question. Finally, he turned to face her, and what she saw in his eyes made her throat tight. Fear. Real, honest fear. She'd seen Dominic face down armed men without blinking, had watched him negotiate deals that could end in bloodshed with perfect calm. She'd never seen him afraid. Until now. 3 weeks ago, he said slowly, I discovered that someone inside my organization has been feeding information to a rival. Someone close. Someone I trust. He paused, and she could see him choosing his words carefully. That same rival has made it clear that they know exactly how to hurt me. Alara's hand went to her throat instinctively. Me. You. The single word carried the weight of 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of distance, 3 weeks of carefully chosen dresses and controlled separation. So you thought ignoring me would help? Despite the fear beginning to curl in her stomach, anger still burned bright. You thought treating me like I didn't exist would somehow protect me? I thought if I pushed you away, if I made you hate me, you might leave on your own. His voice was rough, scraped, raw. I thought if you went to stay with Sophie or your aunt in Boston, anywhere but here, you'd be safe. By breaking my heart? The words came out as a whisper. Dominic's expression cracked just for a moment. Better your heart than your life. They stared at each other across the space of the master bedroom, and Alara felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything she'd thought she knew about the past 3 weeks was rearranging itself into a new, terrible picture. Why didn't you just tell me? She asked. Why didn't you explain? Because you would have insisted on staying. He said it like an accusation and a confession all at once. You would have refused to leave, would have wanted to help, would have put yourself directly in the line of fire, and I can't— His voice broke. I can't lose you, Alara. I can't even entertain the possibility. She took a step toward him, then another. So instead you lost me a different way. You lost us. I know. The admission seemed to cost him. I know. Alara's hand found the edge of the dresser, steadying herself. Her mind was spinning, trying to process everything. Who is it? Who's threatening me? It doesn't matter. It does to me. Alara, stop protecting me from information, she snapped. You want to keep me safe? Then tell me what I'm supposed to be safe from. Give me that much respect. Dominic's eyes searched her face, and she could see the war happening behind them, the desire to shield her battling against her demand for truth. Finally, he spoke. They call him the architect. He's been systematically dismantling everything I've built for the past 6 months, taking my supply lines, turning my people, destroying my legitimate businesses along with the rest. He moved to the window, staring out at the city he'd once controlled with an iron grip. 3 weeks ago, I received a message. A photograph of you at the art gallery opening. You were wearing the blue dress, the one with the silver threading. Alara remembered that night. She'd gone alone because Dominic had canceled at the last minute, claiming business he couldn't avoid. The message said, "Beautiful women make such soft targets," Dominic continued, his reflection in the glass looking like a ghost. Then 2 days later, one of my men was found dead in his car. He'd been my driver for 5 years, loyal, trustworthy. His throat was cut, and there was a note pinned to his chest. Everyone you trust is a door I can open. Alara felt her blood run cold. Oh my God. So yes, I pushed you away. I made you hate me. I thought if you left angry, if our marriage looked broken from the outside, maybe you'd stop being a target. He turned to face her fully. But you didn't leave. You stayed. Every day you stayed, and every day I had to watch you hurt and know I was the one causing it. And every day I was terrified that pushing you away wasn't enough, that he'd kill you just to prove he could. The raw pain in his voice undid something inside her. Alara crossed the room in 4 quick steps and grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to look at her. You should have told me, she said fiercely. You should have trusted me. I was trying to save you. By destroying us? By making me feel worthless and forgotten? Her thumbs brushed against his cheekbones, and she felt moisture there. Dominic Vale was crying. I would have chosen you anyway, you idiot. I would have chosen to stay and fight. That's what marriage means. You don't understand what these people are capable of. Then explain it to me. Stop treating me like something fragile that needs to be locked away. I'm your wife, Dominic, your partner, not a possession to be protected and hidden. His hands came up to cover hers, pressing her palms more firmly against his face, like he was trying to memorize the feeling of her touch. If something happened to you because of me, his voice broke completely. If they hurt you to get to me, I would burn the entire city down, and it still wouldn't be enough. Nothing would ever be enough. Alara felt tears sliding down her own cheeks now. And if you push me away, if you let fear destroy what we have, then they win anyway. Don't you see that? They don't have to kill me to take me from you. You're doing it yourself. The words hung between them, brutal and true. Dominic pulled her hands away from his face, but he didn't let go. Instead, he pressed her knuckles to his lips, his eyes closing like the touch caused him physical pain. I don't know how to keep you safe and keep you close, he admitted. I don't know how to do both. Then we figure it out together, Alara said firmly. No more secrets, no more distance. You tell me everything, and we face this as partners, actual partners. She watched the internal war play out across his features, the instinct to protect her battling against the desperate need to hold her close. For a long moment, she thought he might pull away again, might retreat back into that terrible silence. But then his forehead dropped to rest against hers, and she felt his breath shut her out. Together, he repeated, the word barely a whisper. Together, she confirmed. They stood like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped, breathing the same air. Slowly, carefully, like he was approaching something wild that might startle, Dominic's arms came around her waist. Alara melted into him, her own arms wrapping around his neck, holding him as tightly as he held her. I'm sorry, he murmured into her hair. God, Alara, I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but I was just hurting you instead. You were scared, she said, pulling back enough to look into his eyes. I understand being scared, but you have to promise me, no more shutting me out. Whatever comes next, we face it together. What if facing it together puts you in more danger? What if not facing it together destroys us first? She held his gaze steadily. I'd rather fight beside you and risk everything than live safely without you. That's not living at all. Dominic's thumb traced along her jawline, a touch so gentle it made her ache. When did you get so brave? I married you, didn't I? That took bravery. A small, sad smile tugged at her lips. Staying married to you takes even more. He huffed out something that might have been a laugh or a sob. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you have me anyway. She took a deep breath. So tell me everything. Who is the architect? Why is he targeting you, and what's the plan? Dominic's arms tightened around her waist for a moment before he stepped back, though he kept one hand linked with hers like he couldn't bear to fully let go. He led her to the sitting area by the window, and they sat on the leather sofa that had cost more than most people's cars. The architect isn't just a rival, Dominic began, his voice taking on the clinical tone he used when discussing business. He's something worse. For the past decade, I've built my organization on a specific code. No drugs in schools, no human trafficking, no violence against civilians. I've diversified into legitimate businesses, using my connections to create legal income streams. I'm not clean, Alara. I'll never be clean. But I've tried to be better than what I came from. Alara nodded. She'd known all of this, had made peace with the shades of gray her husband occupied. The architect has no such code, Dominic continued. He deals in everything I won't touch. He's been trying to take over my territory for months, but it's not just about business. It's personal. Why? Dominic's jaw clenched. Because 7 years ago, I killed his brother. The words landed between them like stones. His brother was a monster, Dominic said quickly. He was running a trafficking ring out of the harbor. Young girls, some of them just children. I couldn't stomach it. I gave him a chance to shut it down and walk away. He laughed in my face, so I ended it. I ended him. Alara processed this slowly, and now he wants revenge. He wants to take everything from me the way I took his brother from him. My business, my reputation, my people. Dominic's hand tightened around hers. You. How do you know it's him? Have you met him? No one's met him. That's the point. He works through intermediaries, uses proxies, hides behind layers of insulation. We don't even know his real name. But 3 weeks ago, I got my first real lead. He stood and walked to a portrait on the wall, an oil painting of the harbor at sunset that Alara had always loved. Dominic pressed a hidden button, and the painting swung open to reveal a safe. He withdrew a folder and brought it back to her. Inside were photographs. Surveillance images of men she didn't recognize, shipping manifests, financial records that meant nothing to her. And at the bottom, a photograph that made her blood run cold. It was a picture of her father. "What?" Her voice came out strangled. "Why do you have a picture of my dad?" Dominic's expression turned grim. "Because 6 months before he died, your father was investigating a corruption case. He was an assistant district attorney, remember? He was building a case against someone powerful, someone with connections throughout the city." Alara's hands started to shake. Her father had died 8 years ago in what the police had ruled a random mugging gone wrong. He'd been shot 3 times in an alley behind the courthouse. They'd never found who did it. "You think the architect killed my father?" "I think your father was getting too close to something dangerous, and I think someone had him eliminated to protect their interests. The timeline matches. The MO matches. And if I'm right," Dominic's voice roughened with emotion, "if I'm right, then I've known the man who killed your father has been operating in this city for years. And I didn't know. I couldn't connect the dots until 3 weeks ago when one of my sources gave me a name that appeared in your father's case files." Alara felt like the room was tilting. "What name?" "Marcus Vale." The world stopped. "Your uncle?" Alara whispered. "Your father's brother? But he died years ago. You told me he died before we even met." "That's what I thought. That's what everyone thought." Dominic's face was carved from stone. "But I've spent the past 3 weeks chasing ghosts, and I think Marcus faked his death. I think he's been building his empire in the shadows while I was building mine in the light. And I think when I killed his partner 7 years ago, the trafficker, I didn't know I was signing my own death warrant. I didn't know I was painting a target on everyone I love." Alara couldn't breathe. The information was too much, too big, too terrible. Her father, Dominic's uncle. A web of revenge and death spanning years. "If he's your uncle," she said slowly, "if he's family, then he knows everything about you. He knows your habits, your weaknesses, you," Dominic finished. "He knows about you. And that's why I had to push you away. Because if Marcus is the architect, then he's been watching me for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the perfect moment is when I'm happiest, when I have the most to lose." He knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his. 3 weeks ago, I realized that loving you made you a target. That our marriage, our happiness, all of it was ammunition he could use against me. So I thought if I could make it look broken, make it seem like you meant nothing to me anymore, maybe he'd lose interest. Maybe he'd focus his revenge on me and leave you alone. Tears streamed down Alara's face. But it didn't work. No, because 2 days ago I received another message. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, showing her a text message from an unknown number. "Pushing her away won't save her. Nothing will save her. I'll take her when I'm ready, and you'll watch, just like I watched you take my brother. Count the hours, Dominic. They're running out." Alara felt ice in her veins. "When did you get this?" 48 hours ago. I've had 3 teams trying to trace it. It bounced through 17 different servers across 4 continents. Whoever sent it knows what they're doing. And you've been dealing with this alone. It wasn't a question. I couldn't risk telling anyone. If Marcus has someone inside my organization, then everyone is a potential threat. Even the people I trust most could be feeding him information. Alara stood, her mind racing. "So what's the plan? Because there has to be a plan. You wouldn't just be waiting for him to make his move." A ghost of a smile touched Dominic's lips. "There's my girl, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Don't patronize me. What's the plan?" Dominic stood as well, and she saw the shift happen in real time. The vulnerable, frightened husband transforming into the calculating crime boss who'd built an empire. "The plan is to draw him out. I've been leaving breadcrumbs for weeks, creating opportunities for him to think he's winning. I've let him take some of my smaller operations, let him think I'm weakening, losing control. And tomorrow night, I'm making a move that will force his hand." "What move?" "I'm transferring operational control of my legitimate businesses to you." Alara blinked. "What?" "It's the perfect bait. If Marcus thinks I'm trying to protect my assets by putting them in your name, he'll have to make a move. Either he'll try to use you to get to those assets, or he'll try to eliminate you to destroy them. Either way, he'll have to come out of the shadows. You're using me as bait, Ilara said slowly. I'm making him think I'm using you as bait, Dominic corrected. In reality, you'll be the safest person in the city. I'll have protection on you so tight that Marcus won't be able to get within 100 feet without me knowing. And when he makes his move, I'll be ready. Ilara processed this, her mind working through the angles. And what if he doesn't take the bait? What if he sees through it? Then we move to plan B. Which is? Dominic's expression turned dark. I stop playing defense and burn his entire operation to the ground, piece by piece, until he has no choice but to face me directly. She should have been terrified. Any sane person would have been terrified. But standing there in the penthouse, looking at the man she'd married, Ilara felt something else entirely. Clarity. I want in, she said firmly. Not as bait, not as someone to be protected, as an actual partner in this. Ilara, you said yourself I'm already a target. You said he's already planning to use me against you, so stop trying to shield me and let me help. I'm not just your wife, Dominic. I'm not just some helpless civilian. My father was a prosecutor. I grew up understanding how these games work. Use that. She watched him struggle with it, saw the war between his protective instincts and his respect for her intelligence. If I let you in, he said carefully, you follow my lead. You don't take risks. You don't go off script. Agreed. And if at any point I think you're in real danger, you do exactly what I tell you. No arguments. Within reason. Ilara. Within reason, Dominic. I'm not agreeing to blind obedience, but I will agree to trust your judgment in the moment. He studied her face for a long moment, and she could see him recalculating, adjusting his plans to include her as an active participant rather than a passive victim. Finally, he nodded. Okay, we do this together. But starting now, no more secrets. I tell you everything, and you tell me everything. Complete transparency. Starting now, Ilara agreed. She took a deep breath. So, what's our first move? Dominic glanced at the clock on the mantel. Right now, it's almost midnight. Tomorrow we have a meeting with my lawyers to start the transfer of assets. That's the public move, the one that will get Marcus's attention. But tonight, he moved to his study, gesturing for her to follow. The study was pure Dominic, dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions. But now she noticed details she'd overlooked before. The laptop on the desk with multiple screens, the encrypted phone sitting beside it, the wall safe hidden behind a panel of books. Tonight we prepare, Dominic said. He pulled out a chair for her at the desk. I need you to learn everything about my organization, the people, the structure, the legitimate businesses, and the less legitimate ones. You need to understand how it all connects, where the weak points are, who I trust, and who I don't. Ilara sat, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. How long do we have? Based on the pattern of his previous moves? 3 days? Maybe 4. He likes to work during events, using crowds and chaos as cover. Dominic opened a locked drawer and pulled out a thick folder. This is everything: names, faces, operations, financials. It's a complete map of everything I've built. He set it in front of her, and the weight of it, both literal and metaphorical, wasn't lost on her. If you're doing this, he said quietly, if you're really doing this with me, then you need to know it all, the good and the bad, the legal and the criminal, all of it. Ilara opened the folder and began to read. Numbers, names, photographs, organizational charts. It was overwhelming and intricate and absolutely fascinating. She'd always known Dominic ran a complex operation, but seeing it laid out like this was different. It was bigger than she'd imagined, more sophisticated, more dangerous. And somewhere in this web of connections and power, there was a traitor feeding information to a ghost who wanted them both dead. Hours passed. Dominic sat beside her, explaining connections, answering questions, filling in the blanks that the documents couldn't convey. He showed her the legitimate businesses, real estate developments, import/export companies, nightclubs and restaurants. Then he showed her the other side, the gambling operations, the money laundering fronts, the protection rackets. I've been moving away from this, he said, pointing to the criminal enterprises. Slowly, carefully, trying to go legitimate without triggering a war. Another 5 years and I'd be completely clean, or as clean as someone with my history can ever be. Does Marcus know that? Alara asked. I think that's part of why he's moving now. If I successfully transition to legitimate business, I become untouchable in ways he can't match. I'd have the law on my side instead of hunting me. He'd lose his window for revenge. Alara studied a photograph of a younger Dominic with an older man who had the same dark eyes, the same sharp jawline. Is this him? Is this Marcus? Yes. That was taken at my father's funeral, 15 years ago. Marcus was his younger brother. They'd built the original organization together, but Marcus was always the wilder one. More violent, more unpredictable. When my father died and left everything to me instead of splitting it between us, Marcus disappeared. We found his car at the bottom of the harbor 3 months later. There was blood, signs of a struggle. We assumed he'd been killed by rivals. But he faked it. Apparently. And while I was building my empire in the light, he was building his in the shadows, learning, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to take everything I love. Alara looked up from the photograph to meet Dominic's eyes. He won't succeed. How can you be so sure? Because he spent years planning his revenge, but he doesn't understand the one thing that makes you different from him. She reached out and took Dominic's hand. You learned to love. You built something real, not just an empire, but a life. That makes you stronger, not weaker. He can't see that because he's driven by hatred, but we're driven by something bigger. Dominic brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. How did I get this lucky? You didn't. You earned it. By being better than what you came from, by choosing to change. She smiled slightly. And by choosing me. Best decision I ever made. They worked through the night, and as dawn began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Alara felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there. It would be stupid not to be afraid, but it was tempered now by purpose, by partnership. She understood the stakes, she knew the dangers, and she was choosing to face them anyway, standing beside her husband instead of running from the shadows that chased them both. We should get some sleep, Dominic said finally, closing the last folder. Tomorrow's going to be intense. But neither of them moved toward the bedroom. Instead, they stayed in the study, Alara's head on Dominic's shoulder, his arm around her waist, watching the sun rise over the city that held their future and their greatest threat. Dominic? Alara said softly. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for trusting me with this. His arm tightened around her. Thank you for staying, for not running when I gave you every reason to. Where would I go? She tilted her head to look up at him. You're my home. This marriage, this partnership, it's my home. I'm not giving that up without a fight. Then we fight, Dominic said, his voice carrying the weight of a vow. Together. Together, Alara echoed. As the sun continued its ascent, painting their faces in golden light, neither of them spoke about the deadline ticking away in the background, about the ghost who wanted them dead, about the impossible odds they faced. Instead, they sat in silence, holding each other, gathering strength from the warmth of shared presence. Whatever came next, betrayal, violence, revelation, they would face it as they should have faced everything from the beginning, not as protector and protected, not as boss and possession, but as equals, as partners, as two people who'd chosen each other and would keep choosing each other, no matter how high the cost. The penthouse had transformed overnight from a prison of silence into a war room of shared purpose. And somewhere out in the city, a ghost was planning his next move, unaware that his targets had stopped running and started fighting back. The game had changed, and Alara Voss, the woman who'd spent 3 weeks feeling invisible, was about to become the most important player on the board. The morning broke sharp and cold, the kind of October day that promised winter wasn't far behind. Alara stood in front of the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection with new eyes. The emerald dress from last night hung in the closet, replaced now by a charcoal suit that Dominic had pulled from her wardrobe, something she'd bought months ago for a charity board meeting and never worn. You chose this? She'd asked when she found it laid out on the bed. You chose it, he'd corrected, his voice still rough from lack of sleep. I'm just suggesting you wear it today. There's a difference. Now, as she fastened pearl earrings and swept her hair into a low chignon, Alara recognized the woman in the mirror as someone she'd almost forgotten. Composed, powerful, ready. The door opened and Dominic appeared behind her, already dressed in a three-piece suit that made him look every inch the legitimate businessman he was trying to become. Their eyes met in the mirror. "You look like you're about to take over a company," he said. "Funny, that's exactly what I'm about to do." She turned to face him directly. "Are you sure about this? Transferring everything to me?" "The legitimate holdings, yes. The shell corporations, the front companies, those stay in my name. But the real estate development firm, the restaurant group, the import business, all of it goes to you. On paper, at least." He adjusted his tie, and she noticed his hands were steady. Whatever fears had plagued him last night had been locked away behind the armor of purpose. "It makes strategic sense. If Marcus wants to destroy my empire, he'll have to go through you to do it." "And you think he'll try?" "I think he won't be able to resist. A man like Marcus, driven by revenge, he'll see it as poetic justice. The woman I love controlling the empire I built, he'll want to corrupt that, twist it, use it against me in the most painful way possible." Alara reached out and straightened his already perfect tie, her fingers lingering against the silk. "What if you're wrong about him? What if it's not Marcus at all?" "Then we'll find out soon enough. But my gut tells me I'm right. The methodology, the patience, the personal nature of the attacks, it all points to someone who knows me intimately, someone who understands exactly where to cut to make it hurt most." A knock at the bedroom door interrupted them. Dominic's hand went instinctively to the small of his back, where Alara now knew he kept a gun, one of many revelations from last night's crash course in her husband's darker world. "It's just Marco," Dominic said, relaxing slightly. "I told him to meet us here before the lawyer's office." "Should I know Marco?" "You've met him. Big guy, scar over his left eye. He usually stands by the kitchen at our events, pretending to be catering staff." Alara blinked. "The man who brought me champagne at our anniversary party is your security?" "One of many. I've had people watching you for months, Alara. You were never as alone as you felt." The words should have been comforting, but something in his tone made them sound like a confession. "I know that's invasive. I know it's controlling, but I needed to know you were safe, even when I couldn't be near you." "We're going to have a long conversation about boundaries when this is over," Alara said firmly. "But right now, let Marco in. We have work to do." Dominic opened the door to reveal a mountain of a man who somehow moved with surprising grace. Marco's face split into a genuine smile when he saw Alara. "Mrs. Vale, good to see you looking well." "Marco, I understand you've been following me around the city with champagne and surveillance equipment." To his credit, Marco didn't even flinch. "Just doing my job, ma'am." "Which is?" "Keeping you alive." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Mr. Vale's orders. You're the priority." Alara glanced at Dominic, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "The priority above what?" "Above everything," Marco said. "Above the business, above the territory, above Mr. Vale himself if it came to it. Those were the standing orders from day one of your marriage." Something warm and painful twisted in Ilara's chest. She'd spent 3 weeks feeling abandoned, not realizing that even in his silence, Dominic had been orchestrating an entire network of protection around her. "Thank you, Marco," she said quietly, "for keeping me safe even when I didn't know I needed it." Marco nodded, then turned his attention to Dominic. "We've got a problem." The warmth in the room evaporated instantly. Dominic's entire posture shifted, becoming harder, more focused. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires a secure line." Marco glanced meaningfully at Alara. "She's in now," Dominic said firmly. "Whatever you need to say, you say in front of both of us. No more secrets." Marco's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. "Your call, boss. We found the leak." Alara felt Dominic tense beside her. "Who?" "Tommy Chen, your accountant." The name hung in the air like a death sentence. Alara remembered Tommy, young, ambitious, brilliant with numbers. Dominic had hired him fresh out of MYT 3 years ago, had mentored him, trusted him with the most sensitive financial information. "You're sure?" Dominic's voice was dangerously calm. Caught him on wire last night making a call to a burner phone. We traced the phone to a location that's been linked to 3 other suspicious meetings over the past month. He's been feeding someone information about your accounts, your holdings, your movements. Has he been contained? He's in the basement of the warehouse on 5th, waiting for you. Alara watched the exchange, her mind racing. What does contained mean? Marco and Dominic exchanged a look. Finally, Dominic turned to her. It means Tommy is secured in a location where he can't run, can't communicate with anyone, and can't hurt himself before I get answers from him. You're going to interrogate him. Yes. Violently? Dominic's jaw clenched. If necessary. Alara processed this, feeling the weight of the world she'd truly entered settling onto her shoulders. This wasn't theory anymore. This was real. The actual mechanics of how Dominic's empire functioned when the veneer of civilization was stripped away. I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. You said no more secrets. You said we're partners, so I'm coming. Alara, this isn't... Dominic stopped himself, clearly struggling. This is the ugly part. The part I've always tried to keep you away from. You don't need to see this. But I need to understand it. She held his gaze steadily. You told me last night that I need to know everything about your organization. Well, this is part of it. The part that happens when someone betrays you. I need to see it. I need to understand what we're really dealing with. Marco coughed awkwardly. Boss, we're on a timeline here. The lawyer's office is expecting you in 2 hours. Dominic looked at Alara for a long moment, and she could see him warring with himself. Finally, he nodded slowly. You stay back. You don't speak unless I ask you a direct question. And if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood. And Alara? His hand came up to cup her cheek. What you're about to see, it doesn't change who I am to you. It's a tool, a necessary evil in this world, but it's not all I am. I know, she said softly. I've always known you had edges I couldn't see. I'm just ready to see them now. The warehouse on 5th was exactly what Alara expected. Industrial, isolated, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Marco led them through a side entrance, past rooms filled with legitimate inventory from one of Dominic's import businesses, down a set of concrete stairs into a basement that smelled like oil and fear. Tommy Chen sat in a metal chair in the center of an empty room, his hands zip-tied behind his back, his face already showing signs of rough handling. 2 more of Dominic's men stood guard by the door, their faces carefully neutral. When Tommy saw Dominic, something crumpled in his expression. Mr. Vale? I can explain. I haven't asked you to explain yet. Dominic's voice was arctic. He shrugged out of his suit jacket and handed it to Marco, then rolled up his shirt sleeves with methodical precision. When I want your explanations, I'll request them. Until then, you sit quietly and think very carefully about how you want this conversation to go. Alara positioned herself against the far wall, trying to keep her expression neutral even though her heart was hammering. This was a Dominic she'd never seen before, cold, controlled, radiating threat like heat from a furnace. How long? Dominic asked, circling Tommy's chair slowly. I don't... The slap came so fast Alara almost missed it. Tommy's head snapped to the side, blood appearing at the corner of his mouth. How long have you been feeding information to Marcus Vale? Tommy's eyes went wide with shock. I don't know anyone named Marcus. Another slap, harder this time. Alara forced herself not to flinch, forced herself to watch and understand. This was the reality of the world Dominic inhabited. Violence as communication, pain as currency. Let's try a different approach, Dominic said, his voice almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. You're a smart kid, Tommy. MIT, top of your class, brilliant financial mind. So you're smart enough to know that I already have proof of your betrayal. Marco caught you on wire. We've traced your calls. We know you've been leaking information. The only question now is why, and more importantly, to whom. Tommy's breath came in ragged gasps. They have my sister. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Dominic stopped circling. Explain. 3 months ago, my sister Lisa, she was grabbed on her way home from work. I got a call that night. A man, voice disguised, said they had her. Said she'd stay alive as long as I did exactly what they told me to do. Which was feed them information, your accounts, your movements, your business dealings. Everything they asked for, I gave them. I didn't have a choice. They sent me a picture of her. His voice broke. She was hurt, Mr. Vale. They'd hurt her to prove they could. Alara felt sick. This wasn't simple betrayal. This was coercion, exploitation of love and fear. Did you ever see who took her? Dominic asked, his tone marginally softer now. No. All contact was through burner phones, new number every time. They'd call, tell me what they needed, and I'd deliver it through dead drops around the city. Did they ever mention a name, any identifying information? Tommy shook his head miserably. Nothing. They were careful, professional. The only thing... He hesitated. What? Once, when I asked to talk to Lisa, to prove she was still alive, the man who answered the phone called someone else Uncle, like it was a title, not a relationship. He said, Uncle wants to know about the real estate transfers. That's the only personal detail I ever heard. Dominic and Marco exchanged loaded glances. Uncle. Marcus had always insisted his nephews and the younger generation in the organization call him Uncle, even those not related by blood. When was the last time you had contact? Dominic demanded. 2 days ago. They wanted to know about today's meeting, about the asset transfers to Mrs. Vale. I told them everything. Tommy's eyes slid to Alara, filled with desperate apology. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. But it's my sister. She's all I have left. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his hand coming up to rub the back of his neck in that gesture Alara recognized as deep thought. Marco, get a team together. Find Lisa Chen. I want every resource we have on this. Check hospitals, morgues, abandoned properties, anywhere Marcus might be holding hostages. Boss, what if she's already what? Then we find the body, and we give Tommy closure. But we look. Dominic's tone left no room for argument. He turned back to Tommy. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Marco every single detail you remember about the drops, the calls, the requests. Everything. Then you're going to keep playing along. Next time they contact you, you're going to feed them exactly what I tell you to feed them. You want me to be a double agent? Tommy looked terrified. I want you to fix what you broke. You put my wife in danger, Tommy. You fed them information that could get her killed. So yes, you're going to help me turn this around, and you're going to pray we find your sister alive. Because if we don't, Dominic leaned in close. If we don't, and I find out you were lying about any of this, that you betrayed me for money instead of coercion, then what happens to you will make what they did to your sister look merciful. Tommy nodded frantically. I understand. I swear, Mr. Vale, I swear I'm telling the truth. I never wanted to hurt you or Mrs. Vale. They forced my hand. Marco, take him upstairs, get everything he knows, then keep him comfortable but secured until I decide what to do with him. As Marco and his men escorted Tommy out, Dominic finally turned to face Alara. She could see the tension in every line of his body, could see him bracing for her reaction. You hit him, she said quietly. Yes. Would you have done worse if he hadn't cooperated? Yes. No hesitation, no apology. Alara moved closer, studying her husband's face. But you stopped when you understood he was a victim too. Victimhood doesn't excuse betrayal, but it does contextualize it. Dominic's eyes searched hers. Are you going to tell me you can't handle this? That you want out? No, I'm going to tell you that you need to find Lisa Chen. If she's alive, you bring her home. If she's dead, you make sure whoever killed her pays for it. That's what a good man does, Dominic. And despite everything, despite the violence and the threats and this whole dark world you live in, you're still a good man. Something in his expression cracked. You say that now, but you saw what I'm capable of. I saw you use the minimum force necessary to get information that might save lives. I saw you choose mercy when you could have chosen cruelty. I saw you make protecting someone's sister a priority, even though that person betrayed you. She reached up and touched his face. I saw my husband, just a version of him I hadn't met yet. Dominic pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I don't deserve you. You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you're hoping I'll believe it and leave. Never. The word was fierce. I'll never hope that. They stood like that for a moment before Marco's voice came from the doorway. Boss, we've got another problem. Dominic's arms tightened fractionally before he released Alara and turned. What now? The lawyer's office called. They want to move the meeting up. Someone requested an emergency session, a priority client. Who? Marco's expression was grim. They wouldn't say. Just that it's someone who needs to be added to today's proceedings. Someone with legal standing regarding your assets. Alara felt cold fingers trace down her spine. That's not coincidence. No, Dominic agreed. It's not. Marcus knows about the meeting. Tommy confirmed he fed them that information. So Marcus is making a move. What kind of move? The kind where he forces a confrontation in a public place, surrounded by witnesses and lawyers. Somewhere I can't respond with violence. Dominic's smile was sharp and humorless. He's smarter than I gave him credit for. So what do? We go to the meeting, we see what he wants, and we play it exactly as we planned. Dominic turned to Marco. I want every inch of that law office swept for weapons, listening devices, anything suspicious. I want men positioned outside in the building on every exit, and I want someone on Tommy Chen every second. If he so much as breathes wrong, I want to know about it. Already in motion, boss. Good. Alara and I will be there in 30 minutes. Make sure we're ready for anything. The drive to the lawyer's office was tense and silent. Alara sat in the back of the armored sedan. Another revelation from last night was that their regular car had been replaced months ago with a bulletproof version, watching the city slide past the tinted windows. What if it's a trap? She asked finally. Then we spring it carefully and see what we catch. Dominic's hand found hers across the leather seat. But I don't think it is. I think Marcus wants to deliver a message. He wants us to know he's in control, that he can reach us anywhere, anytime. This is psychological warfare. And the best response to psychological warfare is? Don't let them see you bleed. He squeezed her hand. Which means when we walk into that office, we're united, confident, unshakable. Whatever Marcus throws at us, we take it together and we don't flinch. The law offices of Sterling, Whitmore, and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. Alara had been here once before, years ago, when Dominic had insisted she sign a prenuptial agreement. She'd refused, and he'd loved her more for it. Now they rode the elevator in silence, flanked by 2 of Marco's men who looked like they could bend steel with their bare hands. The elevator dinged softly at each floor, and Alara found herself counting breaths, steadying herself for whatever came next. The reception area was elegant and understated. Cream carpets, abstract art, a receptionist who looked up with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when she saw the small army entering her domain. Mr. Vale? Mrs. Vale? They're expecting you in conference room A. Your other party has already arrived. Other party? Dominic's tone was carefully neutral. Yes, sir. A Mr. Castellano. He said you'd understand. Alara felt Dominic's hand tighten fractionally on hers before relaxing. Of course. Lead the way. Well, conference room A was all windows and polished mahogany, with a view that stretched across the city to the harbor beyond. Seated at the far end of the conference table was a man Alara had never seen before. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, and eyes that looked like chips of ice. He stood when they entered, a smile playing at his lips that didn't reach those cold eyes. Dominic, it's been a long time. Not long enough, apparently. Dominic's voice was controlled, but Alara could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. Mr. Castellano, I'd say it's a pleasure, but we both know that would be a lie. Ever the charming nephew. The man's gaze slid to Alara, and she felt it like oil on her skin. And this must be the famous Alara, so lovely to finally meet the woman who's captured my nephew's heart so completely. Nephew. The word hit Alara like a physical blow. This was Marcus. This was the ghost, the architect, the man who wanted them dead. And he was sitting in their lawyer's office, smiling like this was a social call. Uncle Marcus, Dominic said, and the word dripped with venom. I thought you were dead. Reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated, as they say. I found it useful to be dead for a while. Gave me time to think, to plan, to watch you build your little empire on the foundation our family created. The foundation you abandoned when you faked your death and left us to believe you'd been murdered. Marcus shrugged elegantly. Semantics. The point is, I'm back now, and I've filed a legal claim to half of everything you own based on my original partnership with your father. Seems only fair, doesn't it? Families should share. The lawyer, a nervous-looking man named Peterson, cleared his throat. Mr. Vale, Mr. Castellano has provided documentation showing that he and your late father were equal partners in the original business ventures. If these documents are legitimate, he may have standing to claim a percentage of assets derived from those original ventures. Those original ventures were criminal enterprises that no longer exist, Dominic said flatly. Everything I've built has been separate from that foundation. Has it, though? Marcus leaned back in his chair, utterly relaxed. Your first million came from your father's accounts. Your initial contacts, your suppliers, your network, all inherited from the empire he and I built together. You've simply rebranded, modernized, but the roots are the same. Alara watched this exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't about money. Marcus didn't need Dominic's fortune. This was about power, about proving a point, about twisting the knife. What do you really want? She heard herself say. Both men turned to look at her. Dominic squeezed her hand in warning, but she pressed on. This isn't about legal claims or business partnerships. You didn't fake your death for 15 years just to come back and file paperwork. So what do you actually want? Marcus's smile widened, and for the first time it reached his eyes. The effect was chilling. Smart girl. Dominic always did have excellent taste. He leaned forward, lacing his fingers together on the polished wood. What I want, dear Alara, is very simple. I want my nephew to understand what it feels like to lose everything, his business, his reputation, his power, his security, and most importantly, those ice-chip eyes locked on her. His family. The threat hung in the air, naked and undeniable. Dominic moved so fast Alara barely registered it. 1 second he was seated beside her, the next he had Marcus pinned against the window, forearm across the older man's throat. You threaten her again, Dominic snarled, and I'll kill you right here in front of witnesses and lawyers, and I won't lose a single night's sleep over it. Dominic! The lawyer was on his feet, looking panicked. Please, this is a professional— Shut up, Peterson. Marco had appeared in the doorway, hand inside his jacket. 2 more men flanked him. Marcus, despite being pinned and clearly struggling to breathe, was still smiling. See? This is what I wanted you to understand, nephew. You pretend to be civilized, to be legitimate, to be better than what we were. But underneath it all, you're still the same violent animal our family raised. You can't escape it. And that violence, that darkness, it's going to destroy everything you love. Alara's voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. Dominic, let him go. For a heartbeat, she thought he wouldn't listen. Dominic's forearm pressed harder against Marcus's throat. His entire body coiled with barely restrained violence. The room held its breath. Dominic, she said again, softer this time. This is what he wants. Don't give it to him. Slowly, incrementally, Dominic eased back. Marcus slumped against the window, one hand going to his throat, that terrible smile never wavering. Listen to your wife, nephew. She's smarter than both of us. Marcus straightened his tie with deliberate movements. And she's right. This is exactly what I want. To prove that no matter how many legitimate businesses you buy, no matter how many charity galas you attend, you're still just a thug in an expensive suit. Dominic returned to his seat beside Alara, but she could feel the fury radiating off him in waves. Her own heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression carefully neutral. Marcus was watching them both, studying their reactions like a scientist observing an experiment. Mr. Peterson, Alara said, turning to the ashen-faced lawyer, what exactly does Mr. Castellano's claim entail? Peterson shuffled papers with trembling hands. He's filed for equitable distribution of assets based on the original partnership agreement between himself and the late Antonio Valle. If the court finds in his favor, he could be entitled to up to 50% of holdings that can be traced back to that original enterprise. Which would be what exactly? That's the complicated part, Mrs. Vale. Mr. Castellano's legal team has argued that virtually every asset your husband currently holds can be traced back, through various financial transactions, to seed money from the original partnership. They've constructed a rather elaborate paper trail suggesting that even your husband's most recent legitimate acquisitions are fruit of the poisonous tree, so to speak. Except that's not how asset law works, Alara said calmly. Years of listening to her father discuss cases at the dinner table were paying dividends now. If the original enterprise was criminal in nature, it can't form the basis for a legitimate legal claim. Mr. Castellano would essentially be asking the court to recognize and validate illegal activity. No judge would touch it. Marcus's smile sharpened. Unless I've already negotiated immunity for that original enterprise, which I have. Took some doing, but I've written agreements from the district attorney's office that, in exchange for testimony about certain past criminal activities, none of which implicate me directly, of course, I'm protected from prosecution, which means those original ventures can now be examined legally. The implications crashed over Alara like cold water. You made a deal. You're testifying against Dominic. Against the organization, technically, but yes, I've given them names, dates, transactions, enough to build cases against a dozen different people. Dominic's name appears in those testimonies naturally. After all, he inherited the empire. Marcus examined his manicured nails. The immunity deal also happens to legitimize my claim to the assets. Clever, isn't it? Dominic had gone very still beside her, the kind of stillness that preceded explosions. You're destroying everything. Everyone who ever worked with our family. Everyone who trusted us. You're burning them all to get to me. Yes. Marcus said it simply, without shame or hesitation. That's exactly what I'm doing. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Alara felt the pieces clicking into place in her mind. The asset transfer to me. You knew about it because of Tommy Chen. That's why you moved the meeting up, why you filed your claim now. You wanted to be here when we tried to protect the holdings. Gold star for the lady. Marcus stood, buttoning his suit jacket. You see, if Dominic transfers assets to you today, it could be viewed as an attempt to hide marital property from a legitimate legal claim, which would give me grounds to challenge the transfer. But if he doesn't transfer them, well, then they remain vulnerable to my lawsuit. Either way, I win. This isn't about the money, Dominic said, his voice dangerously quiet. You don't need it. You've built your own empire. This is about revenge. Of course it's about revenge. For the first time, real emotion cracked through Marcus's polished exterior. You killed my partner. You killed Vincent like he was nothing, like his life meant nothing. So yes, I want revenge. I want you to know what it feels like to have everything you love ripped away. Vincent was running a trafficking ring. He was selling children, Marcus. Children. He was my family. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. The only family I had left after your father chose you over me. After he built his empire and left me scraps, Vincent and I built something real, something powerful, and you destroyed it because of some misguided sense of morality. I destroyed it because it was evil. Dominic rose slowly to his feet. And if you can't see the difference between running a criminal enterprise and selling human beings, then you're more broken than I thought. Broken? Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I'm not the one pretending to be something I'm not. At least I'm honest about what I am. You dress up your violence in three-piece suits and charitable donations, but we both know the truth. You're your father's son, Dominic. You're exactly what he made you. Alara watched her husband absorb those words, watched them land like physical blows. She stood, placing herself between the two men. Mr. Castellano, you've made your point. You've filed your legal claim, you've delivered your threats, you've proven you can reach us whenever you want. So what happens now? Marcus studied her with something that might have been respect. Now? Now we wait for the courts to decide. In the meantime, I'll continue dismantling your husband's organization piece by piece. Every supplier who depends on him, every business partner who trusts him, every person who's built their livelihood around his empire, I'll destroy them all. And he'll watch it happen, helpless, knowing that every action he takes to stop me just proves I'm right about what he really is. You're forgetting something, Alara said softly. What's that? He's not alone anymore. You've spent 15 years planning this revenge, building your case, positioning your pieces. But you've made one critical error. And what error is that, my dear? You assumed Dominic would handle this the way you would, with violence and revenge and more darkness. You assumed he'd become the monster you want him to be. Alara felt Dominic's presence at her back, solid and steady. But I won't let that happen. We'll fight you, Mr. Castellano. We'll fight you in court, in business, in every legitimate arena available. And we'll win because, unlike you, we're not fighting to destroy. We're fighting to protect what we've built together. Marcus's expression shifted, became calculating. How noble. And when I take everything from you anyway, when the courts side with me, when Dominic's people turn on him to save themselves, when you're left with nothing, what then? Then we'll rebuild, Alara said simply, together. Because that's what you don't understand. Dominic's empire isn't his power. His relationships aren't his strength. I am. We are. And you can't destroy that with lawsuits and revenge schemes. For a long moment, Marcus just stared at her. Then his smile returned, colder than ever. We'll see about that. Enjoy the confidence while it lasts, Alara. It makes the fall so much sweeter. He nodded to Peterson. My lawyers will be in touch about the next steps. I trust you'll file the appropriate motions? Peterson nodded weakly. Yes, Mr. Castellano. Marcus walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Dominic? About that accountant of yours, Tommy Chen. Tell him I'm sorry about his sister. She really did scream beautifully before the end. The words hung in the air like poison. Dominic moved, but Alara was faster. She grabbed his arm with both hands, anchoring him in place, even as every muscle in his body screamed for violence. He's lying, she said urgently. He's trying to provoke you. Don't let him. Lisa Chen is dead, Marcus continued, clearly enjoying himself now. Has been for 2 months. We just kept Tommy believing she was alive, so he'd keep cooperating. The human capacity for hope is really quite remarkable. Marco. Dominic's voice was a barely controlled growl. Escort Mr. Castellano out of the building. Now. Marco materialized at Marcus's elbow, his massive hand closing around the older man's arm. Let's go. Marcus allowed himself to be guided toward the door, but his eyes never left Dominic's. See you soon, nephew. Give my regards to your lovely wife. I do hope she survives what's coming. The moment the door closed behind them, Dominic's control shattered. His fist slammed into the conference table with enough force to crack the wood. Peterson yelped and scrambled backward. Get out, Dominic snarled at the lawyer. Now! Peterson fled, leaving Dominic and Alara alone in the wreckage of Marcus's visit. He killed her, Dominic said, his voice raw. He killed an innocent woman, just to manipulate Tommy into betraying me. She was leverage, nothing more. Just a tool to use and discard. Alara's heart ached for the girl she'd never met, for Tommy, who'd sacrificed everything for a sister already lost. We don't know for sure, Marcus could be lying. He's not. I could see it in his eyes. He was telling the truth about that, at least. Dominic turned to face her, and the pain in his expression nearly broke her. This is what I didn't want you to see. This is the world I live in, Alara. A world where innocent people die because monsters use them as weapons against each other. Then we make sure no one else dies. Alara moved to him, taking his face in her hands. We find Lisa Chen if she's alive. And if she's not, we make sure Marcus pays for what he's done. Within the law, you mean, using legitimate channels. The words tasted bitter in Dominic's mouth. Yes, because if you go after him with violence, you prove him right. You prove that you're exactly what he says you are. Her thumbs brushed against his cheekbones. But if we beat him legally, if we dismantle his claims and protect your people through the courts, then we prove you've actually changed. We prove the past 15 years meant something. Dominic's hands came up to cover hers. And if the legal route doesn't work, if Marcus's immunity deal holds up, if the courts side with him, then we adapt. We find another way. But we do it together, and we do it without becoming the monsters he wants us to be. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marco entered, his expression grim. Boss, we have confirmation. Lisa Chen's body was found 3 weeks ago in a vacant lot in Brooklyn. Dental records just came back. It's definitely her. She'd been dead approximately 6 weeks when they found her. Dominic closed his eyes. Does Tommy know? Not yet. Thought you'd want to tell him yourself. Yeah, I do. Dominic straightened, and Alara watched him visibly compartmentalize the pain, locking it away behind the armor of necessity. What else? Marcus left the building. We tracked him to a hotel downtown, the Meridian, penthouse suite registered under the name Vincent Castellano. Vincent, his dead partner's name. He's not even hiding his motivations anymore. Dominic ran a hand through his hair. What about the legal claim? Is it legitimate? Our lawyers are reviewing the documents now. Initial assessment is that it's more complicated than we'd like. Marcus's immunity deal does potentially legitimize his claim to the original partnership assets. Question is, how much of your current holdings can be traced back to that foundation? Most of it, Dominic admitted. My father's initial capital seeded everything I built. I've tried to diversify, to create legitimate revenue streams, but the roots are still there. So Marcus could actually win. Alara said it as a statement, not a question. He could take half of everything, yes. Maybe more if his lawyers are creative enough. Alara processed this, her mind already working through possibilities. What if we don't fight the claim? Both men turned to stare at her. Hear me out, she continued. What if instead of fighting Marcus's legal claim, we restructure everything? We separate the assets that can be traced to the original enterprise. Let Marcus have them. They're tainted anyway, built on criminal foundations. Meanwhile, we protect and expand the truly legitimate businesses. We take the parts of your empire that are clean and we build something new with them. You're suggesting I just hand over half my fortune to the man who wants me dead? Dominic's tone was incredulous. I'm suggesting you give him what he's legally entitled to while protecting what actually matters. Think about it, Dominic. Most of your legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the real estate developments, the import companies, they're profitable on their own now. They don't need the criminal money anymore. What if we separated them completely, created a new corporate structure that has no ties to the original enterprise? Marco whistled low. That's actually brilliant. You'd essentially be giving Marcus the tainted money while keeping the clean revenue streams. And burning down everything I built in the process, Dominic said bitterly. No. You'd be burning down everything your father built. What you build moving forward, that's yours. That's clean. That's legitimate. Alara moved closer. Isn't that what you've been trying to do anyway? Go legitimate. This could be the catalyst, the push you needed to finally separate yourself from the past. Dominic stared at her for a long moment, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. The idea clearly appealed to him on some level, but it also meant surrendering, admitting defeat. Marcus won't stop with the money, he said finally. He wants blood. He wants me destroyed completely. Then we give him the battle he thinks he's winning while we prepare for the war he doesn't see coming. Alara's voice was steady, confident. Let him think he's beaten you in court. Let him take the tainted assets. Meanwhile, we build something better, something stronger, something he can't touch because it's completely legitimate. And when he comes after you anyway? Because he will, Alara. He threatened you directly. He's not going to be satisfied with just the money. Then we'll be ready. But we'll be ready as partners, with a plan, with resources he doesn't know about. She squeezed his hand. Trust me, Dominic. Trust us. This can work. Marco cleared his throat. Boss, there's one more thing. We got preliminary info back on the immunity deal Marcus made. He gave up names, dates, operations, enough to build cases against at least 15 different people in your organization. Who? Marco handed over a tablet. Dominic scrolled through the list, his expression darkening with each name. These are some of my most trusted people. Some of them have been with me for years. His jaw clenched. Marcus didn't just target me. He's trying to destroy everyone who's ever worked with me. Which means they need to know, Alara said. They need to be warned about what's coming. If I warn them, some will run. Some will turn on me to save themselves. The organization will fracture. It's going to fracture anyway once the indictments come down. At least this way you give them a choice. You give them time to prepare. Alara took the tablet from him, studying the names. And you find out who your real allies are, the ones who'll stand with you even when it's hard. Dominic looked at her with something like awe. When did you become a strategist? I've always been one. You just never needed me to be before. She handed the tablet back to Marco. Contact everyone on this list. Tell them what's happening. Give them 48 hours to decide what they want to do. The ones who stay, we protect them. We use every legal resource we have to fight their cases. The ones who run, we let them go. And the ones who turn on us? Marco asked. We prepare for that too, but we don't retaliate. We stay clean. Alara met Dominic's eyes. No matter what, we stay clean. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Dominic nodded slowly, and Alara saw the decision crystallize in his expression. Do it, he told Marco. Contact everyone. Set up a meeting for tonight at the warehouse. I'll explain the situation personally. And Tommy Chen? Marco asked carefully. Dominic's expression softened with genuine sorrow. I'll tell him about his sister. Then I'll give him the same choice I'm giving everyone else. Stay and fight or walk away. Either way, I'll make sure Marcus pays for what he did to Lisa. Within the law, Alara reminded him gently. Within the law, Dominic agreed, though the words sounded like a vow. But justice doesn't always require my hands to deliver it. Sometimes the courts can do the work. After Marco left, Alara and Dominic stood alone in the conference room, the city sprawling beneath them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I meant what I said to Marcus, Alara said quietly. You're not alone in this. Whatever comes next, we face it together. He's going to come after you. You understand that, right? Everything you said in there, every way you challenged him, you made yourself a target. I was already a target the moment I married you. At least now I know what I'm up against. She turned to face him fully. Tell me honestly, can we win this? Can we beat Marcus legally? Dominic considered the question carefully. Legally? It's going to be an uphill battle. His immunity deal gives him protection, and his claim to the original assets has merit. But if we're smart, if we restructure and separate the clean businesses from the tainted ones, we can salvage something. We might lose half of what I've built, but we'd keep the parts that matter. And the criminal indictments against your people? Those are harder. Marcus gave them real evidence, real testimony. Some of those cases will stick. People are going to prison, Alara. Good people who trusted me, who worked for me, they're going to pay for crimes they committed in service to my empire. The guilt in his voice was palpable. Alara moved closer, taking his hands in hers. Then we help them. We get them the best lawyers, we support their families while they're inside, we make sure they know they're not abandoned. And moving forward, we make sure no one else has to make that choice. We build something legitimate so the people who work for you don't have to break the law to survive. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's going to be hard and messy and painful, but it's right, Dominic. It's the right thing to do. He pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. I don't know how I got so lucky to find you. You didn't find me. I found you, remember? I was the one who asked you out first. A huffed laugh escaped him. You were relentless. I didn't stand a chance. No, you didn't. She pulled back to look up at him. And you don't stand a chance now either. I'm not going anywhere, no matter how dangerous this gets. So you'd better get used to having a partner in all of this. A partner who's smarter than I am, apparently. Well, someone has to be. The attempted levity fell flat in the gravity of the moment. What do we do now? Now? Now we go talk to Tommy Chen. We tell him his sister is dead. We give him the truth and let him decide what he wants to do with it. Dominic's expression was bleak. And then we prepare for tonight's meeting. We tell my people that their lives are about to implode because I wasn't careful enough, wasn't smart enough to see Marcus's revenge coming. Stop, Alara said firmly. Stop blaming yourself. Marcus chose this path. He chose revenge over everything else. His actions are his own. But the consequences fall on everyone around me. Then we help them bear those consequences. Together. She squeezed his hands. Come on. Let's go talk to Tommy. The sooner we do this, the sooner we can start figuring out our next move. The drive back to the warehouse was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Alara watched the city pass by, thinking about everything that had changed in the past 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she'd been planning to leave, to escape the suffocating silence of her marriage. Now she was planning legal strategies and corporate restructuring to fight a ghost from her husband's past. Life moved fast in Dominic's world. She was learning to move with it. Tommy Chen was exactly where they'd left him, though someone had brought him coffee and removed the zip ties. He looked up when they entered, hope and fear warring in his expression. Mr. Vale, Mrs. Vale, did you find anything about Lisa? Dominic sat down across from him, and Alara watched her husband struggle to find the right words. Tommy, he finally said, his voice gentle. I'm sorry. We found Lisa. The hope in Tommy's eyes blazed brighter. Where is she? Can I see her? Is she okay? No, son. She's not okay. Dominic's voice cracked slightly. She's gone. The police found her body 3 weeks ago. Dental records confirmed it this morning. Your sister has been dead for about 2 months. The color drained from Tommy's face. For a long moment, he just stared at Dominic like he was speaking a foreign language. Then understanding crashed over him like a wave. No, that's not... They let me talk to her. I heard her voice. She was alive. They were lying to you, Alara said softly. They kept you believing she was alive so you'd keep cooperating. I'm so sorry, Tommy. A sound escaped Tommy's throat, something between a sob and a scream. His hands came up to grip his hair, his entire body starting to shake. I gave them everything they asked for. I betrayed you, I put Mrs. Vale in danger, I destroyed my own integrity, all to save her. And she was already dead? His voice rose to a shout. She was already dead and they made me keep believing, keep hoping, keep destroying myself for nothing? Not for nothing, Dominic said quietly. You did it because you loved your sister, because you would have done anything to save her. That's not nothing, Tommy. That's everything. But it didn't matter. She died anyway. She died and I didn't even know, didn't even get to say goodbye, He broke down completely, sobs racking his entire frame. Alara felt tears burning in her own eyes. She'd never met Lisa Chen, but the waste of it all, the cruelty of Marcus's manipulation, made her throat tight with rage and sorrow. Dominic let Tommy cry, didn't rush him or try to comfort him with empty platitudes. He just sat there, bearing witness to the young man's grief, until the sobs finally subsided into hiccuping breaths. What happens now? Tommy asked eventually, his voice raw. What happens to me? That's your choice, Dominic said. You can walk away. I'll give you enough money to start over somewhere else, and you never have to think about any of this again. Or you can stay. You can help me bring down the man who killed your sister. You can make sure Marcus Castellano pays for what he did. Tommy's eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, sharpened with sudden focus. Marcus Castellano did this? Your uncle? Yes. And you're going after him? Within the law. Yes. We're going to dismantle his operation, expose his crimes, make sure he faces justice for everything he's done, including murdering your sister. Tommy wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. What would you need me to do? Keep feeding him information, but this time you feed him what I want him to know. You become my inside line to his operation. It's dangerous, Tommy. If he figures out you've turned on him, he'll kill you. But if you're willing to take that risk, I'm willing. The words came out fierce and immediate. He killed Lisa. He made me destroy everything good in my life for nothing. I want him to pay. I want him to hurt the way I'm hurting. Dominic nodded slowly. Then you're in. But Tommy, we do this smart. We do this careful. And we do this legally. No vigilante justice, no revenge killing. We build a case against him that's so airtight even his immunity deal can't save him. How? Alara spoke up. By documenting everything. Every call, every meeting, every piece of information he asks for. We create a record that shows he's still actively engaged in criminal activity. Immunity protects him from past crimes, but not from new ones. If we can prove he's currently breaking the law, his deal becomes void, Tommy finished, understanding dawning. We can use his own tactics against him. Exactly. Alara felt a spark of hope. But it requires patience. It requires you to keep playing the role of the broken, defeated betrayer while actually working against him. I can do that. Tommy's hands clenched into fists. For Lisa, I can do anything. The warehouse meeting that night drew every major player in Dominic's organization, a gathering that under normal circumstances would have been impossibly dangerous. 37 people crowded into the main floor, their faces reflecting various degrees of suspicion, fear, and loyalty. Alara stood at Dominic's side on a raised platform, acutely aware that she was the only woman in the room and that most of these men had no idea why she was there. Marco had positioned security at every entrance, but the real threat wasn't external. It was the possibility that one of these trusted faces was feeding Marcus information beyond Tommy's coerced betrayal. Dominic waited until the murmuring died down, his presence alone enough to command silence. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the vast space. Thank you all for coming on short notice. What I'm about to tell you will change everything we've built together. Some of you will choose to walk away after tonight, and I won't hold it against you. But you all deserve to know the truth about what's coming. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. 15 years ago, my uncle Marcus Castellano was presumed dead. We mourned him. We believed he'd been killed by rivals. We were wrong. Marcus faked his death and has spent the past decade and a half building his own empire in the shadows. 3 months ago, he decided it was time for revenge. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Several men exchanged glances, while others leaned forward with sudden intensity. Revenge for what? Someone called out. 7 years ago, I killed his business partner, Vincent Moretti. Vincent was running a trafficking operation, children being sold like commodities. I gave him a chance to shut it down. He refused. So I ended it. I ended him. Marcus has decided that debt needs to be paid. Dominic's gaze swept across the assembled faces. Marcus made a deal with the district attorney's office. He gave them names, dates, operations, everything he knew about our organization's past activities. In exchange, he received full immunity from prosecution. The DA is building cases right now against 15 people in this room. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped, angry and afraid, demanding to know who, wanting details, already planning exits. Dominic raised his hand and gradually the noise subsided. I have a list of names. If you're on it, you'll know before you leave tonight. But here's what you need to understand. Marcus didn't just target me. He targeted all of us. Everyone who's ever worked with me. Everyone who's built their life around this organization. He wants to burn it all down. So what do we do? This from Vincent Russo, one of Dominic's longest-serving lieutenants. We can't just sit here and wait for the indictments to come down. No, we can't, which is why I'm giving each of you a choice. Dominic's voice was steady, but Alara could see the tension in his shoulders. You can walk away. Tonight. I'll provide enough money for you to disappear, to start over somewhere the DA can't reach you. Or you can stay. You can fight this with me, using every legal resource available. I'll pay for the best lawyers money can buy. I'll support your families while you're dealing with the courts. But I won't lie to you, some of you will likely go to prison. And what about Marcus? Another voice demanded. We just let him get away with this? Alara stepped forward before Dominic could respond. The movement drew every eye in the room, and she felt the weight of their scrutiny. No, she said clearly, we don't let him get away with it, but we're not responding with violence. We're responding with strategy. Someone laughed, harsh and disbelieving. Strategy? Lady, no offense, but this isn't some corporate boardroom. This is war. You're right, it is war. But it's a different kind of war than you're used to fighting. Alara kept her voice level, authoritative. Marcus has immunity for past crimes, but not for current ones. If we can document him engaging in ongoing criminal activity, his immunity deal becomes void. He goes down for everything, past and present. And how exactly do we do that? Russo asked, his tone skeptical but curious. We use the same tools he's using against us. We build a case. We gather evidence. We work with law enforcement instead of against them. She glanced at Dominic, who nodded encouragement. My husband has spent the past 5 years trying to transition this organization into legitimate business. Most of you know that. What you might not know is that he's been successful. The restaurants, the real estate developments, the import companies, they're profitable on their own now. They don't need the criminal enterprises to survive. So what are you saying? Someone asked. Someone. We go straight, just like that? I'm saying we separate the clean from the tainted, Alara continued. The businesses that can stand on their own merit get moved into a new corporate structure, one that has no ties to the past, that Marcus can't touch legally. The rest, the operations that are still criminal, or that can be traced back to the original enterprise, those we let Marcus take. We give him what he's legally entitled to while protecting what actually matters. The warehouse erupted again, voices angry and disbelieving. Alara stood her ground, waiting for Dominic to restore order. "She's right," Dominic said, his voice cutting through the noise. "I've looked at the numbers. With the right restructuring, we can protect about 60% of the legitimate holdings. The other 40%, the parts that are still tied to criminal activity or that came from tainted money, those we sacrifice. We let Marcus have his legal victory while we build something better." "You're asking us to give up everything we've worked for," Russo said, but his tone was thoughtful now rather than angry. "I'm asking you to give up the parts that were built on a foundation of crime and keep the parts we've earned legitimately. I'm asking you to help me finish what I started 5 years ago, going clean." Dominic's hands gripped the railing in front of him. "I know that's not what some of you signed up for. I know some of you prefer the old ways. That's fine. Take the money I'm offering and go. No hard feelings. But for those who stay, we're doing this differently." A hand rose in the back. "What about the people already indicted? The ones Marcus named?" "We fight for them. Every single one. The best lawyers, the best defense strategies, everything we can do within the law. And if they still go down..." Dominic's voice roughened. "We take care of their families. We make sure they're supported while they're inside. We don't abandon our people just because things got hard." Alara watched the faces in the crowd, seeing the calculations happening behind their eyes. Fear and loyalty warring with self-preservation. These were men who'd built their lives in the shadows, who'd profited from the very activities that were now being used against them. Asking them to go legitimate was asking them to fundamentally change who they were. "I need to know tonight," Dominic said, "who's staying and who's going, because starting tomorrow, we begin the restructuring. Anyone who's not committed to going clean needs to be gone before that happens." The silence that followed was heavy with decision. Then Russo stepped forward. "I'm in. My kids are in college. My wife thinks I run a consulting firm. I've been wanting out of the dirty side for years. If you're offering a legitimate path forward, I'll take it." One by one, others stepped forward, some immediately, some after long moments of deliberation. By the time the dust settled, 23 people had committed to staying. 14 had chosen to take the money and disappear. Dominic nodded, his expression carefully neutral, even though Alara could see the relief in his eyes. "Those who are leaving, see Marco before you go. He'll handle the logistics. Those who are staying, we meet tomorrow morning at my office downtown. 9 o'clock sharp. We start planning the restructuring." As the crowd began to disperse, Alara noticed one man who hadn't moved toward either group. He stood apart, older than most of the others, with silver hair and a face carved by decades of hard living. "Antonio," Dominic called out, "you haven't decided?" The man, Antonio Delgado, moved closer to the platform. "I'm thinking, Dominic. Been with your family since before you were born. Worked for your father, watched you grow up, helped you build all this. Now you're asking me to choose between the life I've known for 40 years and some fantasy about going legitimate." "It's not a fantasy," Alara said. "The businesses are real. The profits are real. The only thing changing is the source of that money." Antonio's eyes fixed on her, sharp and assessing. "You love him? Really love him? Or is this some kind of game to you?" The question caught her off guard. "I love him, more than anything." "Then you should know what you're asking him to give up. The power, the respect, the fear. Those things came from being dangerous, from being someone people didn't cross. You take away the criminal empire, you take away his teeth. What's left?" "A man," Alara said simply. "A husband. A human being who doesn't have to look over his shoulder every day wondering who's coming for him next. That's what's left, Antonio, and it's enough." Antonio studied her for a long moment, then turned to Dominic. "Your wife's got fire. I'll give her that. All right, I'm in. But not because I believe in this legitimate business dream. I'm in because 40 years of loyalty means something, and I'm not walking away when you need people most." Relief flooded Dominic's features. "Thank you, Antonio." "Don't thank me yet. Wait and see if this crazy plan of yours actually works. Antonio's expression softened slightly. But for what it's worth, your father would be proud. He always wanted better for you than what he had. After the warehouse emptied, Dominic, Ilara, and Marco remained behind, the vast space suddenly feeling cavernous and cold. 23 people, Marco said, consulting his tablet. That's better than I expected, honestly. I thought we'd lose more. We still might, Dominic replied. Once the reality sets in, once the indictments actually come down, some of them will panic. We need to be ready for that. The ones who left, they'll be out of the country within 48 hours, Marco continued. I've got people arranging new identities, transportation, everything they need to disappear. By the time the DA realizes they're gone, they'll be untraceable. Ilara felt a pang of unease. Won't that look suspicious? 14 people suddenly vanishing right before indictments come down? It'll look exactly like what it is, guilty people running from justice, Dominic said. But that's their choice. I gave them options. They chose flight instead of fight. And what about us? What's our next move? Dominic pulled out his phone, bringing up a document. I've been working with my lawyers on the restructuring plan. It's aggressive, maybe too aggressive. We'd essentially be creating an entirely new corporate entity, transferring all the clean assets into it, and leaving the shell companies and tainted holdings in the old structure. Which Marcus can then claim through his lawsuit, Ilara finished. Exactly. He gets what he's legally entitled to. The criminal empire my father and he built together. But the legitimate businesses, the ones I've grown through actual work and legitimate means, those stay protected. Marco whistled. He's going to be furious. He wants to destroy you completely, and instead you're handing him a pile of worthless shell companies while keeping the real value. It's not entirely worthless, Dominic corrected. Some of those operations still generate significant revenue. He'll walk away with maybe $100 million in assets. But compared to what I'm protecting, over $400 million in legitimate holdings, it's a fraction. Ilara's head spun at the numbers. She'd known Dominic was wealthy, but hearing it laid out so starkly was staggering. And the lawyers think this will hold up in court? They think we have a strong argument, yes. The key is demonstrating that the legitimate businesses were grown through independent effort and legal means, not just laundered criminal proceeds. We have documentation going back 5 years showing legitimate revenue streams, tax payments, proper business practices. But Marcus will challenge it, Ilara said. He'll argue that the seed money for those businesses came from criminal enterprises, that everything is tainted by the original foundation. He will. Which is why we need the documentation to be airtight, every transaction accounted for, every revenue source verified, every business decision documented. Dominic's expression was grim. It's going to be a fight, Ilara. A long, expensive, public fight. Are you ready for that? She thought about it, really thought about it. The media attention, the scrutiny, the invasion of privacy that would come with this kind of legal battle. The whispers and judgments from people who knew her from her old life, before Dominic. The possibility of losing everything anyway. I'm ready, she said finally. As long as we're fighting together. Always together, Dominic confirmed. He glanced at Marco. What's the status on Tommy Chen? Is he holding up? He's solid. Angry, grieving, but focused. He had his first contact with Marcus's people this afternoon. They called asking for information about tonight's meeting. Tommy told them about the gathering, but said he didn't know specifics about what was discussed. And they believed him. Seemed to. They're expecting another report from him in 48 hours. He'll tell them about the restructuring plan then, make it seem like he's still completely under their control. Dominic nodded slowly. Good. The longer we can keep Marcus thinking he's winning, the more rope we give him to hang himself. Ilara's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. It's my Aunt Claire. She's asking if the rumors about you are true. What rumors? She's sending a link. Ilara clicked it, and her breath caught. It was a news article from one of the city's major outlets, posted just 30 minutes ago. The headline read, Local business mogul Dominic Vale linked to organized crime investigation. The article detailed Marcus's immunity deal, though it didn't name him specifically. It talked about ongoing federal investigations into Vale Industries and its connections to criminal enterprises. It quoted anonymous sources close to the investigation saying indictments were imminent. They leaked it, Dominic said, his voice flat. Marcus or someone in the DA's office. They leaked the whole thing to the press. Why? Alara felt panic rising. Why would they do that? To apply pressure. To make it public so I can't make it go away quietly. To destroy my reputation before the legal battle even begins. Dominic's jaw clenched. It's smart, actually. By the time this hits the morning news cycle, every legitimate business partner I have will be distancing themselves from me. Marco's phone started ringing. He answered, listened, then his expression darkened. Boss, we've got a problem. 3 of our biggest clients just pulled their contracts. The restaurant suppliers, the shipping company, and the commercial real estate partnership. They're all citing the news article and saying they can't be associated with ongoing criminal investigations. Of course they are. Dominic's laugh was bitter. Marcus timed this perfectly. He knew about the restructuring plan before we even announced it. Someone told him. The 3 of them exchanged glances. The uncomfortable truth hung in the air. There was still a leak somewhere in the organization, someone beyond Tommy who was feeding Marcus information. We need to find them, Marco said. Fast, before they can do more damage. How? Alara asked. How do we find someone when we don't even know who to suspect? Dominic was quiet for a moment, his mind clearly working through possibilities. We feed different information to different people. See what Marcus knows and work backwards. A canary trap, Alara said, the term coming from some half-remembered conversation with her father about investigation techniques. You give each suspect slightly different versions of the same story, then see which version gets back to Marcus. Exactly. We have 23 people who committed to staying. We divide them into small groups, tell each group a different detail about our plans. Whatever detail Marcus acts on, we know which group the leak came from. That could work, Marco said slowly, but it requires Marcus to act quickly, to respond to the information before he has time to cross-reference sources. So we make the information too good to ignore, Dominic replied. We tell each group about a different vulnerability, a different weakness in our restructuring plan. Marcus won't be able to resist exploiting it. Alara's mind was already racing ahead. What kind of vulnerabilities? Fake ones, strategic misdirection. Dominic began pacing, energy returning to his movements. We could tell one group that all our cash reserves are being moved to an offshore account tomorrow. Tell another group that the real estate portfolio is being transferred before the court order can stop it. Tell a third group that we're planning to flee the country. And whichever action Marcus takes, we know who told him, Alara finished. It's risky, Marco warned. If we're wrong, if there's more than one leak, we could end up exposing ourselves even more. We're already exposed, Dominic countered. Marcus leaked the investigation to the press. He's playing for public humiliation now, not just legal victory. So we need to know who we can trust and who we can't. This is the fastest way to find out. Alara's phone buzzed again. Another text from her aunt, this one more urgent. Dominic, Claire wants to know if I'm safe. She's asking if I want to come stay with her until this blows over. He turned to look at her, and she saw real fear in his eyes for the first time that night. Maybe you should. No. Alara, this is about to get ugly. The press will be camped outside our building. Every detail of our lives will be scrutinized. People will say terrible things about you, about us. Your reputation will be damaged just by association. I don't care about my reputation. I care about you. About us. She moved to him, taking his hands firmly. I told you I was in this, and I meant it. I'm not running to my aunt's house the first time things get difficult. This isn't just difficult, it's exactly what we expected. Marcus is escalating. We knew he would. So we adapt and we keep fighting. Her voice was steel. I'm staying, Dominic. End of discussion. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shaking slightly. I'm going to lose you. One way or another, this is going to take you from me. No, it's not. The only way you lose me is if you keep trying to push me away for my own good. Stop protecting me and start trusting me. I do trust you. Then prove it. Stop asking me to leave. Stop suggesting I'd be safer somewhere else. We're partners, remember? For better or worse. This is definitely worse, he said, but there was a hint of dark humor in his tone. Then it can only get better from here. She pulled back to look at him. Now, what's our next move? How do we implement this canary trap? Dominic released her and turned to Marco. Set up 3 separate meetings for tomorrow. Different times, different locations. Divide the 23 people into 3 groups of 7 or 8. I'll meet with each group individually and give them each a different piece of strategic information. What information? Marco asked, already making notes on his tablet. Group 1 hears that we're moving all liquid assets to a Cayman Islands account tomorrow at noon. Group 2 hears that we're filing an emergency injunction to freeze all asset transfers until the lawsuit is resolved. Group 3 hears that Alara and I are leaving the country on Friday, flying to a non-extradition country. All of which are lies, Marco confirmed. All of which are lies. But they're plausible enough that Marcus will believe them. And more importantly, they require different responses. If he tries to intercept the Cayman transfer, we know Group 1 has the leak. If he files a counter-motion to the injunction, it's Group 2. If he makes a move to stop us from leaving the country, it's Group 3. Alara listened to this with a mix of admiration and unease. This was strategy at its most ruthless, using loyal people as unknowing test subjects to root out a traitor. But she also understood the necessity. They couldn't move forward without knowing who could be trusted. What about me? She asked. What's my role in all this? Dominic considered. I need you to reach out to our legitimate business partners. The ones who pulled their contracts tonight. They're scared, acting on emotion and bad press. If you can meet with them personally, explain what's really happening, we might be able to salvage some of those relationships. You want me to be the public face of the legitimate business side. You're the perfect person for it. You're not tainted by the criminal past. You're educated, articulate, respectable. More importantly, you're my wife. If you're standing by me, it sends a message that this isn't what the press is making it out to be. Alara thought about this. It could backfire. They could see me as complicit, as someone to avoid rather than engage with. It's a risk, Dominic admitted, but I think it's worth taking. You have social connections, I don't. Your family name still means something in certain circles. Use that. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll make the calls tomorrow. But Dominic, I need complete honesty from you. If I'm going to represent the legitimate side of your business to these people, I need to know there really is a legitimate side. No hidden criminal connections, no money laundering, no gray areas. The businesses I'm asking you to represent are clean. I swear it. The restaurants, the real estate development company, the import business, they generate real revenue through legal means. The books are clean, the taxes are paid, everything is above board. You're sure? I'm sure. I've spent 5 years building them to be that way specifically because I wanted a path out of the life I was born into. You're not going to be lying to these people, Alara. You're going to be telling them the truth, that we're trying to separate the past from the present, the criminal from the legitimate. She believed him. She could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. This wasn't manipulation or misdirection. This was genuine desire for change. Then I'll do it. I'll meet with them, make the case for why they should stick with us through this. Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and swore. Boss, we've got another problem. One of the guys who chose to leave tonight, Frank Morrison, he's not answering his phone. The team sent to process his exit can't find him. Dominic's expression went cold. How long has he been missing? Last confirmed sighting was when he left the warehouse about 2 hours ago. He was supposed to meet the team at a safe house for processing. Never showed. Frank Morrison, Alara said, trying to place the name. Wasn't he in charge of the Northern Territory operations? He was. He also knows details about our entire security network, our safe houses, our contingency plans. Dominic turned to Marco. Find him, now. Use every resource we have. If he's gone to Marcus, I'm on it. Marco was already moving toward the door, phone to his ear, barking orders. Alone again, Dominic and Alara stood in the empty warehouse, the weight of the night pressing down on them. This is falling apart faster than I anticipated, Dominic said quietly. The press leak, the lost contracts, now Morrison disappearing. Marcus is moving faster than we are. Then we move faster too, Alara replied. We implement the canary trap tomorrow. We start the restructuring. We fight back. We don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. You're right. He pulled her close, and they stood together in the cavernous space, drawing strength from each other's presence. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this. I choose you, and I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. She tilted her head up to look at him. We're going to win, Dominic. Maybe not the way we originally planned, maybe not without losing things along the way, but we're going to come out the other side of this together. I believe that. I hope you're right. I'm always right. You should know that by now. The attempted levity fell flat in the gravity of the moment, but it was enough to draw a small smile from him. Let's go home, he said. We have a long day ahead of us tomorrow. As they left the warehouse, Alara looked back one last time at the vast empty space. 24 hours ago, she'd been planning to leave her marriage. Now she was planning corporate restructuring and strategic counterattacks against a man who wanted them dead. Life with Dominic Vale was never going to be simple. But standing there in the October night, his hand warm in hers, she realized she didn't want simple. She wanted real. She wanted partnership. She wanted exactly this: the challenge, the risk, the fierce determination to build something better from the wreckage of the past. Together, they walked into the night, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The call came at 4 in the morning, shattering what little sleep Alara had managed to find. Dominic answered before the second ring, his body already tense with anticipation of bad news. Talk to me, he said into the phone, his voice alert despite the hour. Alara watched his expression shift from concern to cold fury as he listened. When he finally spoke again, his words were clipped and precise. Keep him there. I'm on my way. He was out of bed before he ended the call, pulling on clothes with swift, economical movements. Alara threw back the covers and did the same. What happened? They found Morrison. He's alive, but he went straight to Marcus after leaving the warehouse. Marco's team intercepted him, trying to leave Marcus's hotel an hour ago. Dominic's jaw was tight as he buttoned his shirt. He's been singing like a canary, telling Marcus everything about tonight's meeting, about our plans, about the people who stayed. So Marcus knows about the restructuring already. He knows we're planning something, but Morrison left before we discussed specifics. The question is how much damage he's already done and what Marcus is planning to do with the information. Alara finished dressing and grabbed her coat. I'm coming with you. Alara, don't. We're past the point of you trying to protect me from the ugly parts, remember? She met his eyes steadily. Besides, you might need me. Morrison knows I was at the warehouse. If he's told Marcus about my involvement, then I need to understand the full scope of what he knows. Dominic nodded, recognizing the logic, even if he didn't like it. They left the penthouse together, Marco meeting them in the parking garage with the car already running. The drive took them to one of Dominic's legitimate properties, a storage facility on the outskirts of the city that served as both a real business and a convenient location for less public meetings. Marco led them through the maze of storage units to a small office in the back where Frank Morrison sat zip-tied to a chair, his face showing fresh bruises. Mr. Vale, Morrison said, attempting a smile that came out as more of a grimace. I can explain. I'm sure you can. The question is whether I want to hear it. Dominic circled the chair slowly, his presence filling the small room. You chose to leave tonight. I gave you money, resources, a clean exit. Instead, you went straight to my uncle and told him everything you knew. So start talking, Frank. What exactly did you tell Marcus? Morrison swallowed hard. He already knew about the meeting. He knew you were gathering everyone together. I just confirmed the details. Who showed up? Who decided to stay? Who decided to leave? What else? I told him you were planning some kind of restructuring, but I didn't know the details because you hadn't shared them yet. I told him your wife was involved, that she was the one pushing the legitimate business angle. Alara felt Dominic tense beside her, but his voice remained controlled. And what did Marcus say when you told him about my wife? He smiled, said it was perfect, that you'd handed him exactly what he needed. Morrison's eyes darted to Alara. I'm sorry, Mrs. Vale. I didn't mean to put you in danger. I was just trying to buy myself some insurance with Marcus, make myself valuable to him so he'd protect me when everything went down. How did Marcus even know to expect you? Alara asked. How did he know you'd be coming to him? Morrison hesitated, and Dominic's hand shot out, gripping the man's collar. Answer her. He's been cultivating me for months, Morrison admitted. Ever since you started talking about going legitimate, he's had people reaching out. offering me a place in his organization, promising protection from prosecution, better money. I resisted at first, but when you gave the ultimatum last night, stay and go clean or take the money and run, I realized I didn't want either option. I wanted to keep doing what I've always done, just with someone who wasn't trying to become a Boy Scout. So you betrayed 15 years of loyalty for what? A promise from a man you've never met? Dominic's voice was ice. A promise from a man who's beating you, Morrison shot back. Come on, Dominic. You're smart enough to see it. Marcus has you cornered. He's got the immunity deal, the press leak, the legal claim to your assets. You're trying to go legitimate right when the walls are closing in, and it makes you look weak. I made the smart play. Dominic released Morrison's collar and stepped back. For a long moment, he just stood there processing. Then he turned to Marco. What else did he tell them? According to our surveillance of the hotel, Morrison was inside for approximately 40 minutes, long enough to share everything he knew. Marco consulted his tablet. We've confirmed that Marcus made several phone calls after Morrison left. One to his lawyers, two to numbers we can't trace, and one to what we believe is a burner phone. The burner phone, Ilara said. That could be Tommy Chen's contact number. Marcus might be verifying Morrison's information, or giving Tommy new instructions based on what Morrison told him. Dominic turned back to the man in the chair. Did Marcus mention Tommy Chen or anyone else feeding him information? He didn't give me names, just said he had multiple sources inside your organization, that I was just one piece of a larger puzzle. Morrison's bravado was cracking now, fear seeping in around the edges. Look, I told you everything I know. What are you going to do with me? Dominic studied him for a long moment. That depends. Are you willing to fix what you broke? What do you mean? I mean, go back to Marcus. Tell him you've had second thoughts, that you're scared I might come after you for leaving. Tell him you want deeper protection, that you're willing to give him more information in exchange for guarantees. Dominic's eyes were cold. Become my double agent. Morrison laughed, a sound edged with hysteria. You're crazy. Marcus would see through that in a second. Not if you sell it right. You're already a traitor, Frank. Marcus believes you chose him over me. All you have to do is lean into that. Make him trust you enough to bring you deeper into his operation. And then you report everything back to me. And if he catches me, if he figures out I'm playing both sides, then you die. Probably painfully. Dominic's tone was matter of fact. But if you refuse to help me, you die anyway. At least this way you have a chance of walking away from this alive. The choice hung in the air, stark and terrible. Morrison's face went through a series of expressions: fear, calculation, resignation. What would you want me to find out? Everything. His operation, his plans, his weaknesses, where he's keeping his records, who his real allies are, what his next move is. Dominic leaned in close. And most importantly, I want to know about any other sources he has inside my organization. Every leak, every informant, every person feeding him information. You get me that, Frank? And maybe you walk away from this. Morrison nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. But I want guarantees too. I want it in writing that if I deliver this information, I get immunity from whatever you're planning to do to the people who betrayed you. You're not in a position to negotiate. Then kill me now, because I'm not walking back into Marcus's operation without some kind of insurance. Morrison's voice steadied with desperate courage. You want me to risk my life spying for you? Fine, but I want something in return. Ilara watched Dominic calculate the angles, weigh the risks. Finally, he nodded. You get me everything I asked for, every detail about Marcus's operation, every name of every person betraying me, concrete evidence of ongoing criminal activity that voids his immunity deal, and I'll let you walk away. No retaliation, no revenge, no looking over your shoulder. You'll have enough money to start over somewhere else, and my word that I won't come after you. Your word in writing, Morrison pressed. Fine. Marco will draw up a document. You sign it, I sign it, and it's binding. Dominic straightened. But Frank, understand this. If you betray me again, if you try to play both sides for real instead of pretending for Marcus's benefit, then all bets are off. The document means nothing, and you become a problem I solve permanently. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Marco escorted Morrison out to arrange the paperwork, leaving Dominic and Alara alone in the small office. She moved to the window, watching the first hints of dawn paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Do you think he'll follow through?" she asked. "Honestly, I don't know. Morrison's motivated by self-interest, which makes him both useful and unreliable." Dominic came to stand beside her. "But he's also terrified, and fear can be a powerful motivator. If he believes his best chance of survival is helping us, he'll help us. And if Marcus sees through it? Then we lose a source and gain confirmation that Marcus is even more paranoid and careful than we thought. Either way, we learn something valuable." Alara turned to face him. "The Canary Trap meetings are this morning. Are we still doing those?" "More than ever. Morrison told Marcus we're planning a restructuring, but he didn't have details. That means the fake information we feed the three groups is even more important. Marcus will be expecting information from his sources, and when it comes, he'll act on it. And we'll know who to trust." Alara checked her watch. "It's almost 5. When's the first meeting?" 8 o'clock, Group 1, which means we have 3 hours to prepare." He took her hand. "I need you to make those calls to our business partners this morning. The news cycle is going to be brutal today. The leaked investigation story will be everywhere. If we can get even a few of them to commit to staying with us before they see the headlines, it'll help. I'll start calling at 7. Most of them are early risers." She squeezed his hand. "Dominic, what if this doesn't work? What if we do everything right and Marcus still wins?" "Then we pick up the pieces and start over. But we don't give up, and we don't let him destroy us. No matter what happens with the money or the businesses or the legal battles, as long as we're together, he hasn't won." The words were meant to be comforting, but Alara could hear the uncertainty underneath them. Dominic was good at projecting confidence, at appearing unshakable even when the ground was crumbling beneath him. But she knew him well enough now to see the cracks in the armor. "Come here," she said softly, pulling him into her arms. For a moment, they just held each other, drawing strength from the warmth of contact, the solid reality of shared presence. "I'm scared," Dominic admitted against her hair. "I haven't been truly scared in years, but right now I'm terrified that everything I've built is going to collapse and take you down with it. Then we rebuild, together, as many times as it takes." She pulled back to look at him. "You're not alone in this anymore, remember? Whatever happens, we face it as partners." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do, more than anything." "I know. I love you too, even when you're being an idiot and trying to protect me by pushing me away." A small smile tugged at her lips. "We're going to get through this, Dominic. I believe that." By 7 o'clock, Alara was back at the penthouse, coffee in hand, working through her list of calls. The first 3 went to voicemail. She left carefully worded messages explaining that the news reports were sensationalized, that the legitimate businesses were completely separate from any investigation, and that she hoped they could meet in person to discuss maintaining their partnerships. The fourth call connected. Richard Chen, owner of the largest restaurant supply company in the city and a key partner in Dominic's restaurant group. "Alara," Richard's voice was cautious. "I was going to call you this morning. I saw that you pulled the supply contract last night. I wanted to reach out personally to discuss it. Look, I like you and Dominic. You've been good clients. But I can't have my company associated with a federal investigation into organized crime. The optics alone would destroy my other relationships. I understand completely, and I'm not asking you to associate with anything criminal. I'm asking you to continue working with businesses that are entirely legitimate. The restaurants themselves are profitable, legal enterprises. The ownership structure might be changing, but the restaurants aren't going anywhere." "Changing how?" Alara took a breath, knowing she was walking a fine line between transparency and oversharing. Dominic is in the process of restructuring his holdings. The legitimate businesses, including the restaurants you supply, are being moved into a completely separate corporate entity with no ties to anything under investigation. It's a clean break from the past. And you believe that will hold up legally? I've seen the documentation. The restaurants generate real revenue through legal means. They pay taxes, follow health codes, employ people legitimately. Whatever the investigation into Dominic's past uncovers, those businesses are clean. Richard was quiet for a moment. Why are you the one making this call? Why not Dominic? Because I'm going to be running those businesses moving forward. The restructuring puts me in charge of the legitimate holdings, while Dominic deals with the legal issues surrounding his past activities. I wanted you to hear directly from me that your contract would be with me and my management team, not with anything connected to the investigation. You're taking over? I am, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that we can maintain the same professional relationship we've always had, just under new management. Another pause. Then, send me the documentation, the new corporate structure, the financial statements, everything. I'll review it with my lawyers. If what you're saying is accurate, if the businesses really are separate and clean, then maybe we can work something out. Relief flooded through her. Thank you, Richard. I'll have everything to you by this afternoon. Don't thank me yet. I'm not promising anything except to look at the information. But Alara, his tone became more serious. If this turns out to be smoke and mirrors, if those businesses aren't as clean as you say, I'm gone for good. Understood? Understood. And I promise you, everything I've told you is the truth. She made 6 more calls over the next hour. 2 went to voicemail. 3 resulted in polite but firm refusals. 1, the commercial real estate partnership, agreed to meet with her that afternoon to review the documentation. It was progress. Small, fragile progress, but progress nonetheless. At 8 o'clock, Dominic held his first canary trap meeting. He'd divided the 23 people into 3 groups based on their positions and expertise. Group 1 consisted of the financial people, accountants, money managers, the people who moved money and handled transactions. To them, he leaked the false information about moving liquid assets to the Cayman Islands. We're transferring everything at noon today, he told them, watching their faces carefully. Every dollar in accessible accounts is being moved offshore where Marcus can't touch it legally. I need you all to know so you can prepare for the temporary liquidity issues it might create. He watched them process this, saw concern and understanding ripple through the group. Antonio Delgado raised his hand. Boss, moving money that fast raises red flags with federal regulators. You sure that's smart right now with an investigation ongoing? It's a risk, Dominic admitted, but leaving the money where Marcus can potentially freeze it through legal action is a bigger risk. We move it now, deal with the regulatory questions later. The meeting lasted 30 minutes, with Dominic answering questions and reinforcing the urgency of the timeline. When they dispersed, he had Marco's team tracking each person's movements and communications. Group 2 met at 10 o'clock, the legal and operations people. To them, Dominic revealed the fake emergency injunction plan. We're filing papers this afternoon to freeze all asset transfers until the lawsuit is resolved. It's a defensive move to prevent Marcus from seizing anything while the courts determine ownership. He made eye contact with each person. This stays quiet until the filing happens. If Marcus gets wind of it early, he'll file a countermotion and tie us up in court for months. Vincent Russo, sharp as ever, immediately saw the implications. That injunction would freeze your assets too, though. You wouldn't be able to move money or restructure anything. That's the trade-off. We sacrifice mobility for protection. Better to have the money locked down where neither of us can touch it than risk Marcus getting his hands on it first. Group 3 met at noon, the security and enforcement people, the ones who'd always handled the more physical aspects of Dominic's empire. To them, he delivered the fake flight plan. Ilara and I are leaving the country Friday morning. Private jet to Costa Rica, then connecting to somewhere without extradition treaties. We'll run the businesses remotely while the legal situation plays out here. He let that sink in. I'm telling you because you'll need to coordinate security for the departure and maintain operations while we're gone. One of the younger members, a man named Joseph, looked skeptical. Boss, running isn't your style. Why now? Because my style is what got us into this mess, Dominic said bluntly. Standing and fighting works when you're dealing with rivals in the same world, but Marcus has the law on his side now. Sometimes the smart play is to remove yourself from the board until you can change the game. By the time the third meeting concluded, Dominic was exhausted. He found Ilara in his office, surrounded by documents and looking equally drained. How did it go? She asked. The meetings went as planned. Now we wait and see which piece of false information Marcus acts on. He collapsed into the chair beside her. How are the business calls going? Better than expected. I've got two partners willing to review the restructuring documentation, one who agreed to meet in person this afternoon, and the rest are at least taking my calls instead of ghosting us completely. That's something. He ran a hand through his hair. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Marcus to make his next move. As if summoned by the words, Dominic's phone rang. Tommy Chen's name appeared on the screen. Tommy, Dominic answered, putting it on speaker so Alara could hear. What's happening? They just called me. Marcus's people. They want detailed information about your cash reserves, specifically which accounts have the most liquid assets. Tommy's voice was tight with controlled tension. They also asked about your travel plans, whether you have any trips scheduled, any signs you're preparing to leave the country. Dominic's eyes met Ilara's. The canary trap was working. Marcus was responding to the false information, but he was casting a wide net, trying to verify details across multiple sources. What did you tell them? I said I'd seen unusual activity in the financial systems, but didn't have specifics. I told them I thought you might be planning to move money because there were encrypted transfers being scheduled, but I couldn't access the details. As for travel, I said I hadn't seen any bookings, but that you'd been having private conversations with your wife about contingency plans. Good. That's perfect. You're giving them just enough to seem helpful without actually confirming anything concrete. Dominic's mind was racing. Did they give you any indication of what Marcus is planning? Not directly, but there was something else. They mentioned they're bringing in outside help. Someone with federal connections who can freeze assets and ground private flights if necessary. They're preparing for multiple scenarios. Alara felt ice in her veins. Federal connections? Who? They didn't say a name, but they implied it's someone in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Someone Marcus has leverage over. Dominic swore under his breath. Of course he does. Marcus wouldn't rely solely on his immunity deal. He'd have insurance. Someone in a position of power who owes him favors, or who he has dirt on. What do we do? Tommy asked. Keep playing your role. Feed them ambiguous information. Make them think you're trying to help, but that you're limited by access restrictions. And Tommy, Dominic's voice softened. Thank you. I know this isn't easy, especially after everything with your sister. Lisa would want me to do this. She'd want Marcus to pay for what he did. Tommy's voice cracked slightly. I'll call again if they contact me. After he hung up, Alara turned to Dominic. He's throwing everything at us. Multiple information sources, federal connections, preparing for all our possible moves. How do we counter that? We accelerate our timeline. The restructuring happens today instead of over the next week. We file the paperwork, transfer the assets, create the new corporate entity, all of it right now, before Marcus can coordinate with his federal contact to stop us. Can we even do that? Don't these things take time? Usually, yes, but I've had lawyers preparing the documents for days. All we need is final approval and signatures. If we move fast enough, we can have everything filed with the state before close of business today. Alara's head was spinning. What about the canary trap? We won't know which group leaked the information until Marcus acts on it. We'll know soon enough. And in the meantime, we remove the actual vulnerabilities while he's busy chasing the fake ones. Let him try to intercept a Cayman transfer that isn't happening. Let him file counter motions to an injunction we never intended to file. Let him try to stop a flight we're not taking. While he's distracted, we complete the real restructuring and put the legitimate businesses beyond his legal reach. It's risky. If something goes wrong with the filing, if there's a delay or a mistake, then we deal with it. But doing nothing is riskier. Every hour we wait is another hour for Marcus to coordinate with his federal contact, another hour for him to position his chess pieces. Dominic stood, energy returning to his movements. I'm calling the lawyers. We're doing this now. The next 6 hours were a blur of activity. Lawyers arrived at the office with stacks of documents. Alara signed her name so many times her hand cramped. Dominic coordinated with Marco to ensure security was tight, that no one could interfere with the process. By 4 o'clock, they'd created Vale Enterprises LLC, a completely new corporate entity with Alara as majority owner and CEO. The restaurants, the real estate development company, the import business, all of it was transferred into the new structure, complete with documentation showing they'd been operating profitably through legitimate means for years. The old structure, Vale Industries, the shell companies, the operations that could be traced back to criminal foundations, those remained in Dominic's name, vulnerable to Marcus's legal claim. "It's done," the lead lawyer, a sharp woman named Catherine Torres, said at 5:15. "All documents are filed with the state. Vale Enterprises is officially a separate legal entity with no ties to the companies under investigation. Mrs. Vale, congratulations. You're now the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation." Alara felt the weight of that settle on her shoulders. She'd gone from feeling like a trophy wife to running a legitimate business empire in less than 48 hours. "What happens to the old companies?" she asked. "They remain in your husband's name. If Marcus's lawsuit succeeds, he'll be entitled to claim ownership of those entities and their assets. But he won't be able to touch Vale Enterprises. It's clean, separate, protected." Dominic nodded, his expression unreadable. "And the financial hit I'm taking?" "Significant," Catherine admitted. "You're essentially surrendering about 40% of your total net worth, roughly $180 million in assets. But you're protecting the other 60%, and more importantly, you're protecting the revenue streams that will let you rebuild. The businesses under Vale Enterprises generate approximately $50 million in annual profit. That's sustainable, growable income that Marcus can't touch." "So we survive," Alara said. "You more than survive. You position yourselves for long-term success while cutting Marcus off from anything truly valuable. He'll get the tainted money, but you'll keep the clean future." After the lawyers left, Dominic and Alara stood alone in his office, the setting sun painting the city in shades of amber and gold through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "You just gave up nearly $200 million, Alara said quietly. "I gave up $200 million in blood money to protect $400 million in legitimate assets and the woman I love. That's not a sacrifice. That's the deal of a lifetime." He turned to face her. "How do you feel about being a CEO?" "Terrified, exhilarated, completely unprepared." She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. 48 hours ago, I was packing a bag to leave you. Now I'm running your business empire." "Our business empire," he corrected. "I'm still part of this, even if my name isn't on the paperwork. We're partners, remember?" Before she could respond, Dominic's phone rang. Marco's name flashed on the screen. "Talk to me," Dominic answered. "We've got results from the canary trap. Marcus made his move." Alara felt her heart rate spike. This was it. They were about to learn who the leak was. "Which group?" "Group 1. He just filed an emergency motion with a federal judge to freeze all your offshore accounts and block any international fund transfers. The motion specifically mentions Cayman Islands accounts and a noon transfer that already supposedly happened." "Which means the leak is someone in our financial group." Dominic's voice was ice. "It gets more specific. We traced the timeline of communications. Only 3 people from that group made phone calls in the 2 hours after your meeting ended. Antonio Delgado called his wife. Maria Santos called her lawyer about an unrelated matter, and David Hu made a 20-minute call to a burner phone." "David!" Dominic sounded genuinely shocked. "He's been with me for 8 years. I trusted him with some of my most sensitive financial information." "I'm sorry, boss, but the evidence is clear. Within an hour of David's call, Marcus filed the motion. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence." Alara watched emotions play across Dominic's face: betrayal, anger, cold calculation. Then his expression hardened into something dangerous. "Where's David now?" "That's the thing. He's gone. Left his apartment about an hour ago with 2 suitcases. We tracked him to the airport. He's booked on a flight to Hong Kong that leaves in 3 hours." "Stop him. I don't care how, but don't let him get on that plane." "Already handled. TSA flagged his passport for additional screening. He's not going anywhere." After Marco hung up, Alara moved closer to Dominic. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give David the same choice I gave Morrison. Help us or face the consequences. He knows Marcus's financial networks, knows how the money moves. That information could be valuable." "And if he refuses?" "Then he goes free. I meant what I said about not becoming the monster Marcus wants me to be. I won't kill David for betraying me, no matter how much I might want to. But I will make sure he understands the full weight of what he's done." They drove to the airport in tense silence. Marco had arranged for them to use a private security office where David Hu sat under guard, his face a mask of resignation and fear. Mr. Vale, David said as they entered, I suppose there's no point in denying it. No, there isn't. We have the phone records, the timeline, everything. You called Marcus's people and told them about the Cayman transfer. Dominic sat down across from him. What I want to know is why. I paid you well, trusted you, gave you responsibility. So why betray that? David's laugh was bitter. You really don't see it, do you? You talk about going legitimate like it's some noble quest, but you're asking people like me to give up everything that made this life profitable in the first place. The real money wasn't in your legal businesses, Dominic. It was in the schemes, the offshore accounts, the creative financial structures that skirted the law. You want to go clean? Fine. But don't expect everyone to follow you into poverty. You were making $200,000 a year. That's not poverty. It's not what I was making when I was moving $50 million in untraceable funds either. Marcus offered me a position in his organization. Real money, real power, doing what I'm actually good at instead of becoming some corporate accountant filing quarterly reports. Alara spoke up. So you sold out 15 people who trusted you, put everyone's freedom at risk, and aligned yourself with a man who murders innocent women for what? More money? David's eyes slid to her. You don't understand this world, Mrs. Vale. You came into it wearing designer dresses and moral superiority, but you have no idea what it takes to survive here. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. I understand perfectly. I understand that you valued money over loyalty, that you were willing to destroy people who considered you family because your ego couldn't handle doing honest work. She leaned forward, and I understand that you're about to face the consequences of that choice. What are you going to do? Kill me? That would be disappointing. I thought we were all going legitimate now. Dominic's smile was cold. Oh, we are. Which means instead of handling this personally, I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to cooperate with the federal authorities. You see, David, when you called Marcus's people, you engaged in conspiracy to commit fraud and obstruction of justice. The offshore accounts you told them about don't exist, but your attempt to help them freeze non-existent assets is still a crime. And since Marcus's immunity deal doesn't extend to his associates, you're fully vulnerable to prosecution. The color drained from David's face. You're bluffing. Marco, call Agent Richardson at the FBI field office. Tell him we have information about someone actively conspiring with Marcus Castellano to commit financial crimes. I'm sure he'll be very interested. Wait! David's composure shattered. Wait, please. We can work something out. I'll tell you everything I know about Marcus's financial network. I'll testify if you need me to. Just don't hand me over to the feds. Why shouldn't I? You were perfectly happy to hand me over to them. Because I can help you destroy Marcus completely. I know where he keeps his records, how he moves his money, which accounts are vulnerable. I can give you everything you need to dismantle his entire operation. Alara watched Dominic consider this. The old Dominic, the one who ruled through fear and violence, would have made David pay with blood. But the man sitting here now, the one trying to build something better, saw a different kind of opportunity. Here's the deal, Dominic said finally. You give us everything, and I mean everything, about Marcus's financial operations. You testify if needed. You help us build a case that destroys him completely. In exchange, I'll consider not handing you over to the FBI. Consider? That's the best you're getting, David. Your cooperation might earn you leniency, but you're not walking away clean. You burned that bridge when you made your phone call. David slumped in his chair, defeated. Fine. I'll tell you everything. For the next 3 hours, David spilled Marcus's financial secrets, offshore accounts in 7 different countries, shell companies layered so deep they seemed impenetrable, real estate holdings purchased through proxies, and most importantly, a safe deposit box in a private bank in Switzerland containing physical records of every criminal transaction Marcus had made in the past 15 years. He kept paper records? Alara asked, surprised. Marcus is old school. He doesn't trust digital systems, doesn't believe anything stored on a computer is truly secure. So he keeps handwritten ledgers, paper contracts, physical evidence of every deal. It's his insurance policy. If anyone ever turns on him, he has proof to bring them down too. Dominic leaned back, processing this. Can you get access to that box? Not directly, but I know the account number, the bank, and the security protocols. With the right leverage, You could potentially force the bank to open it. What kind of leverage? A court order from a Swiss judge. If you can prove that the box contains evidence of ongoing criminal activity, the Swiss authorities will cooperate. Their banking secrecy laws have exceptions for serious crimes. Alara felt a spark of hope. If we can get those records, we can prove Marcus's immunity deal was fraudulent. He claimed to have given the prosecutors everything, but if there are transactions and crimes he didn't disclose, his deal becomes void, Dominic finished. He loses his protection and becomes vulnerable to prosecution for everything. Exactly. And more than that, those records probably implicate other people, accomplices, partners, the federal contact he bragged about. We could bring down his entire network. Dominic stood, energy crackling through him. David, you just bought yourself a chance at survival. If this information pans out, if we can actually access those records, I'll keep the FBI off your back. But if you're lying, if this is some scheme to buy time, it's real. I swear on my life, it's real. Marcus showed me the box once, told me it was his guarantee that no one would ever truly betray him because he could destroy anyone who tried. David's voice was earnest now, desperate. Use it against him. Take everything he has the way he tried to take everything from you. By the time they left the airport, dawn was breaking again. Another night without sleep, another 24 hours of constant crisis management. But for the first time since Marcus had reappeared, Alara felt genuine hope. We can actually win this, she said as they drove back to the city. If we get those records, if we can prove Marcus has been lying to the prosecutors, we can end this completely. It's not going to be easy. Getting a Swiss court order requires evidence of serious crimes, and we can't access the box without the court order. It's a catch-22. Unless we use what David told us about Marcus's current operations, the accounts, the shell companies, the ongoing criminal activity, if we can document even a fraction of it, we can show a pattern of behavior that contradicts his immunity deal claims. That gives us grounds for the court order. Dominic glanced at her with admiration. You've gotten good at this. I've had excellent teachers. You, Marco, even Marcus in a twisted way. I'm learning how this world really works. She took his hand. But more than that, I'm learning that we can fight in it without becoming what we're fighting against. We're using legal tools, building cases, working within the system, even when it would be easier to work outside it. Easier and more dangerous. If I responded to Marcus with violence, he'd use it as proof that I haven't changed, that I'm still the criminal he claims I am. But if we beat him legally, if we dismantle his empire using the same tools he tried to use against us, we prove that change is possible, that someone can come from darkness and build something legitimate. Alara smiled. We prove that love and partnership are stronger than revenge and violence. They spent the next week building their case with methodical precision. Catherine Torres, their lawyer, worked with international legal experts to prepare the Swiss court filing. Tommy Chen continued feeding Marcus ambiguous information while documenting every request, every demand, creating a pattern of ongoing criminal activity. And Marco's team tracked Marcus's movements, his communications, his associates. The break came on day 9. One of Marco's surveillance teams captured video footage of Marcus meeting with Assistant U.S. Attorney William Brennan in a private club downtown. The meeting lasted 40 minutes, and afterward, Brennan was seen accepting an envelope from one of Marcus's men. That's our federal connection, Dominic said, watching the footage. Brennan has been Marcus's inside man in the prosecutor's office. That's how Marcus knew to time his immunity deal perfectly, how he knew which charges to focus on. Can we prove it? Alara asked. We can now. Marco pulled up financial records on his tablet. Brennan's been making regular deposits to an offshore account, $25,000 a month for the past 8 months. The deposits come from one of the shell companies David identified as belonging to Marcus. So Brennan is on Marcus's payroll while simultaneously handling the immunity deal and the investigation into Dominic's organization. That's not just conflict of interest, that's criminal corruption. Alara felt vindication surge through her. We have him. We have enough to make noise, Dominic corrected, but we need more. We need proof that Brennan actively sabotaged the investigation, that he steered it away from Marcus's current crimes and toward my past activities. We need to show a pattern of corruption, not just a single compromised meeting. Tommy Chen provided the missing piece 2 days later. Marcus's people had asked him to pass a message to Brennan through a specific channel, a burner phone drop at a predetermined location. Tommy, instead of simply making the drop, had Marco's tech team clone the phone and monitor all its communications. The messages revealed everything. Brennan feeding Marcus information about pending indictments, warning him when investigators were getting too close to his current operations, actively redirecting federal resources away from Marcus and toward Dominic's organization. It was comprehensive, systematic corruption. "This is it," Catherine Torres said, reviewing the evidence. "This is enough for the Swiss court order and enough to void Marcus's immunity deal. Once the prosecutors see that their own AUSA was compromised, that the deal was built on fraudulent information, they'll withdraw it immediately." "How long until we can file?" Dominic asked. "The Swiss paperwork needs another 48 hours to finalize. The corruption evidence against Brennan we can file tomorrow morning. I'd recommend hitting them simultaneously. File the criminal complaint against Brennan while requesting the Swiss court order. It creates a comprehensive picture of Marcus's ongoing criminal enterprise." Alara looked at Dominic. "This is really happening. We're actually going to bring him down." "If everything goes according to plan, yes. But Marcus has survived this long by being adaptable, by having contingencies. We can't assume victory until it's complete." The words proved prophetic. That night, as they slept in the penthouse, Marco called with urgent news. "Boss, Marcus is on the move. He just left his hotel with 2 suitcases and a security team. We're tracking him now, but it looks like he's heading to the private airfield." Dominic was out of bed in seconds. "He's running. He knows we're close to something." "How could he know?" Alara asked, fear spiking through her. "We've been so careful." "Brennan. If Brennan figured out we're onto him, he would have warned Marcus. We need to stop him before he gets out of the country." They raced to the airfield, Marco coordinating with law enforcement to try to ground any private flights. But when they arrived, Marcus's plane was already taxiing toward the runway, clearance granted through channels that Brennan likely facilitated. "We're too late," Marco said, frustration evident. "By the time we cut through the red tape to stop that flight, he'll be airborne." Dominic watched the plane accelerate down the runway, watched 15 years of planning and revenge lift off into the night sky. For a moment, Alara thought he might lose control, might let the fury consume him. Instead, he pulled out his phone and called Catherine Torres. "File everything, the Swiss court order, the Brennan corruption charges, all of it. File it now, tonight, before Marcus can get ahead of us from wherever he's running to." "It's 2 a.m, Catherine protested. "Courts don't open until—" "Emergency filings exist for exactly this reason. We have evidence of an imminent threat, a corrupt federal official actively obstructing justice and a fleeing suspect. File everything as emergency motions. Wake up judges if you have to, but get those documents filed." Catherine, to her credit, didn't argue further. "I'll make it happen. Give me 3 hours." As they watched Marcus's plane disappear into the darkness, Alara took Dominic's hand. "He's running. That means we've won. He wouldn't run if he thought he could beat us." "Maybe. Or maybe he's regrouping, planning his next attack from a distance. Marcus doesn't give up easily." "Neither do we." She turned him to face her. "Listen to me. Regardless of what happens next, regardless of whether Marcus comes back or stays gone, we've already won the important battle. We've protected the legitimate businesses, we've separated ourselves from the criminal past, and we've done it without compromising who we are or what we believe in. That's victory, Dominic. Everything else is just cleanup." He pulled her close, and she felt some of the tension drain from his body. "When did you become the wise one?" "I've always been wise. You just needed chaos to notice." 3 hours later, as promised, Catherine called with confirmation. All documents filed. Emergency hearings scheduled for first thing Monday morning. The wheels of justice, slow and methodical, were finally turning in their favor. The Swiss court order was granted 4 days later. The safe deposit box was opened under judicial supervision, revealing exactly what David had promised: 15 years of meticulous criminal records, documenting transactions, partnerships, and crimes that Marcus had never disclosed to prosecutors. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Within 48 hours, Marcus's immunity deal was revoked. William Brennan was arrested on corruption charges, and warrants were issued for Marcus's arrest on multiple charges of fraud, conspiracy, corruption, and obstruction of justice. But Marcus himself remained gone, disappeared into whichever country he'd fled to, beyond the reach of U.S. law enforcement. "He's gone," Marco confirmed 2 weeks after the emergency filings. "We've tracked him to 3 different countries, but he's staying in places without extradition treaties. He's not coming back." But Dominic stood in his office, now Alara's office, technically, since she was the CEO of Vale Enterprises, staring out at the city he'd fought so hard to protect. "So he wins in a way. He destroys my reputation, costs me $200 million, forces me to restructure everything, and then escapes without facing justice." "No," Alara said firmly, coming to stand beside him. "He lost everything that mattered. His immunity deal is void, so he can never come back to the U.S. without being arrested. His financial empire is being seized and liquidated by federal authorities. Every person who worked with him is either cooperating with prosecutors or facing charges. And most importantly, he failed to destroy you. We're still here, still together, still building something better." Dominic turned to her, and she saw something new in his expression. Peace, maybe, or acceptance. "You're right. We won. Not the way I originally wanted, not with Marcus in a cell paying for his crimes. But we won the fights that mattered. And we have each other." That's what he never understood, that love and partnership make you stronger, not weaker. 3 months later, Vale Enterprises had stabilized and was growing steadily. Alara had proven to be a capable CEO, combining strategic thinking with genuine relationship building. Several of the partners who'd initially fled had returned, convinced by her leadership and the clean financial records that the company was exactly what she'd promised: legitimate, profitable, and entirely separate from Dominic's criminal past. Dominic himself had been largely cleared of criminal charges. With Brennan's corruption exposed and Marcus's immunity deal void, the prosecutors had reassessed their cases. Most of the charges against Dominic's former associates were either dropped or significantly reduced in exchange for testimony about Marcus's operations. Tommy Chen was working as a consultant for Vale Enterprises, having found purpose in helping build something legitimate in his sister's memory. Even David Hugh had kept his end of the bargain, providing testimony that helped dismantle the last remnants of Marcus's financial network in exchange for immunity from federal prosecution. He'd left the country afterward, but he'd done what he'd promised. On a cold January evening, 6 months after Marcus had fled, Dominic and Alara stood on the penthouse balcony, watching snow fall over the city. The same balcony where this had all started, where Alara had tried to leave and Dominic had tried to push her away. "Sometimes I still can't believe we made it through," Alara said softly. "There were so many moments where everything could have fallen apart. But it didn't. We didn't let it." Dominic wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. "You know what the strangest part is? I spent 15 years building an empire based on fear and control, and I thought that was power. But this, what we have now, what we built together, this is real power, the kind that doesn't require violence or threats, just partnership and trust." "And love," Alara added. "Don't forget love." "Never. Love is what made all of this possible." He turned her to face him. "I know I don't say it enough, but thank you. Thank you for not leaving when I gave you every reason to. Thank you for staying and fighting beside me. Thank you for believing we could build something better. You don't have to thank me for loving you, Dominic. It's not a favor or a service. It's just what I do." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, snow had begun to accumulate on the balcony railing, painting everything white and clean. "What do you think Marcus is doing right now?" Alara asked. "Probably planning his next revenge scheme from whatever hole he's hiding in. Men like Marcus don't change. They don't grow. They just fester and plot. Do you think he'll ever come back? Try again?" "Maybe. Probably. But if he does, we'll be ready. And more importantly, we'll face it together." Alara leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence, the steady beat of his heart. 6 months ago, she'd been planning to leave, to escape the silence and distance that had made her marriage feel like a prison. Now that same marriage was the foundation of everything good in her life. They'd lost money, lost allies, lost the illusion of invulnerability. But they'd gained something far more valuable: true partnership, honest communication, and the knowledge that they could face anything as long as they faced it together. The penthouse, once a gilded cage of silence, had become a home. The empire, once built on fear, was being rebuilt on legitimacy. And the marriage, once strained to breaking, had been forged into something stronger than either of them had imagined possible. Hand in hand, Alara and Dominic Vale walked back inside, leaving the snow and the cold and the darkness behind. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever challenges still waited in the shadows, they would face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together, as equals, as partners, as two people who'd chosen each other and would keep choosing each other, no matter the cost. That was their victory. That was their triumph. And that was enough.